Yes, yo. Yes, yo. Another Saturday night, and therefore, another Saturday night shoot the breeze. I want to thank everyone who participated last week from the chat, on the panel. All of you were awesome. Hopefully, we can replicate it again tonight. Episode, what's it, 187 now? Episode 187. Let me make sure my sound is working. Okay, my sound seems to be working. Drop a one if you can hear my voice from wherever you are. In the meantime, what I'll do is I'd like to let you guys in on what we're discussing tonight. In tonight's episode, we're going to discuss Samuel L. Jackson's character at the 2025 Super Bowl. The Super Bowl was about 2 weeks ago. The question is he Uncle Sam or Uncle Tom? We're going to talk about Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley gave a powerful speech at the African Union. We're going to try to answer the question, are we the baddies? We're going to talk about how the descendants of the enslaved redeveloped Africa. And lastly, we're going to try to discern if something is facts or not when it comes to single moms. So those are the topics that we have tonight. I see the matron is out there. Thank you, matron, for letting me know. Black Steel is out there. Jackadero is out there as well. Good to see all of you folks, man. I'm going to start the show officially. In the meantime, I'm going to drop the link for the panel. And on the other side, I'll introduce any and all panelists as well as drop Shoot the Breeze topic number one. Shout out to Anthony as well. So with all of that said, you guys do stay tuned.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio. Welcome to the Bitter Medicine Podcast, where it's all about Black empowerment. Our show focuses on Black news and entertainment, arts, science, economics, history, people, and strategies that uplift, empower, and motivate Africans within the diaspora. And now, your host, whose favorite color is black, Goku.
Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast. I am your host, Koku. Just want to remind you guys before we get the show rolling that this show is part of a podcast network called KWAZ Radio. The other shows on the network you are invited to tune into.
This is D Webb with the Harsh Reality Podcast, asking you to tune in where we tackle the news of the day that affects our community, only on KWAZ Radio.
Peace, family. This is Oni, inviting you to listen to the Pro-Black Perspective, where Black problems are addressed with Black solutions.
Greetings, fam. Tune in to The Learning Curve with me, the Revolutionary Matron on KWAZ Radio.
You are listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast on KWAZ Radio.
Yes, indeed. Welcome back to the Bitter Medicine Podcast Shoot the Breeze segment, Saturday night Shoot the Breeze segment. I told you guys what you should expect tonight as far as topics. let me introduce the panelists that have joined me so far. Black Steel, how are you this week, brother?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good, man. Thanks for coming through.
That's what's up.
Yes, sir. I hope everything is okay too, by the way, because I remember you couldn't come up last week, so I hope all is well. With that said, let me say what's up to Buana. Buana, how are you this week?
I'm good, Coco. Can you hear me?
Yeah, loud and clear.
Wonderful. I get on tonight. All right, bro. I'm here.
Yes, sir. Jacadero, the link is pinned to the top of the chat. So hit the link, and you should see it. If you don't see it, I'll send it again in just a few seconds. Without further ado, let's get into it. Shoot the breeze topic number 1 tonight. Oh, okay. Yeah. Shoot the breeze topic number 1 says, this Malcolm X quote reminded me of Samuel L. Jackson's character at the 2025 Super Bowl. Is he Uncle Sam or Uncle Tom? Let me send this to Jacadero right now. Here you go, brother. What we'll do is this comes with a link. We'll check it out. Let me share my screen. And then let me share with you guys so you can see it. I had to scene, sorry. So here we are. This is the link to the prompt, but real quick, let's welcome Jacadero to the panel tonight. Jacadero, how are you this week?
I'm well. Peace and blessings.
Yes, sir. Thanks for coming through. So what we'll do is, like I said, this is Shoot the Breeze topic number 1. It says, this Malcolm X quote reminded me of Samuel Jackson's character at the 2025 Super Bowl. Is he an Uncle Sam or Uncle Tom? We'll watch the video maybe twice because it's a short, and then we'll discuss it.
Too loud, too reckless, too ghetto. Mr. Lamar, do you really know how to play the game? Then tighten up. Oh, too loud, too reckless, too ghetto. Mr. Lamar, do you really know how to play the game? Then tighten up. Oh, too loud, too reckless, too ghetto. Mr. Lamar, do you really know how to play the game?
All right. Do you really know how to play the game? He really does remind me of his character from that one movie. And like someone in the chat, in the comment section of this video said it is cringeworthy. Let me just check the original prompt real quick. I want to make sure I didn't miss something, because after all, I do have to edit some of these prompts because they're too long. Yes, I did miss something real quick. Let me see if I can share it with you guys. Hold on. Sorry about this, but I'll get it all together in just a second. So what was attached to this was the actual quote from Malcolm X. Make sure you guys can see it. Malcolm X says, the slave master took Tom and dressed him well and fed him well and even gave him a little education, gave him a long coat and a top hat and made all the other slaves look up to him. Then he used Tom to control them. The same strategy that was used in those days is today by the same white man. He takes a Negro, a so-called Negro, and make him prominent, build him up, publicize him, make him a celebrity, and then he becomes a spokesman for Negroes and a Negro leader. That's Malcolm X. So I'll throw it to the panel now. Does this Malcolm X quote that I just read that's up on the screen, does this remind you of Samuel L. Jackson's character that you just saw or recently saw as well yourselves at the Super Bowl? That character he played at the 2025 Super Bowl. Is this Uncle Sam or is this Uncle Tom type business? The matron did ask me for the quote, and that is the quote, matron. Sorry, I didn't realize that was a part of the attachment as well. With that said, let me start with Black Steel. Black Steel would say.
Well, I would say this. I'm a little confused about. I mean, I get it. I get it. I would say that in general, understanding how the Uncle Tom quote works, right? African people have been victims of white domination for centuries. I would say this, just looking at this from my perspective, the symbolism of having Samuel L. Jackson dressed up as an Uncle Sam character, right? Is Black patriotism is a weird thing for me, right? Because what exactly do you have to be patriotic about? And I think there's been a lot of energy being used to keep Black people on some sort of patriotic ideals. Or we built this country. I saw something today. Somebody said, why would you want to see the country your ancestors built destroyed? And I thought to myself, what a dumbass statement, because that implies your ancestors wanted it to be built, wanted to build it in the first place. It was built under duress. They were built at gunpoint through the threat of violence. Of course, they wanted to destroy. They didn't want to be here. They wanted to go. They wanted to be free and go home. So I would say any Black patriots are a weird thing, because what are you patriotic about? What is it about America that you love so much? Especially now, we got a renaissance of white racism. Open white racism is always there, but now it's back in effect and it's cool now. Now they're changing government policy. So I would definitely lean towards Uncle Tom. But also I understand that sometimes these are just the symbolism is a thing about it. But I personally, for myself, I would definitely lean towards being an Uncle Tom. And for those of the listeners who may not be familiar with Uncle Tom, he's a character out of the book Uncle Tom's Cabin by Harriet Beecher Stowe. It was a pre-Civil War book written in the United States. It was a for its time, it was a very strong piece of abolitionist literature. So much so that the book was banned in many southern states. And when the writer, she met Abraham Lincoln, he said, "Oh, you're the one who started this war," somewhat jokingly. But because the book was such a huge seller, the main character in the book was Uncle Tom. Uncle Tom was a kind and loving Black person. He prayed for his master. The villain in the book was a Black man named Sambo. All right, Sambo was a villain in Uncle Tom's Cabin. Uncle Tom refused to tell on slaves who ran away, and he got beaten to death for it. He ended up dying. The sacrificial Black person who gave his life, extolling the goodness of white people. So the Uncle Tom character has kind of come down to us throughout the years, and just have a better understanding of that. He's seen as a sellout and a Black person who is really Black on the inside. I mean, Black on the outside, white on the inside. But, I would just say, in my opinion, I think he's more of a Tom in my thoughts. So I'll leave it there. Thanks.
No, Black Steel, I really appreciate that. And I appreciate you going back and letting the listeners know who Uncle Tom was in terms of literature. Because we kind of, for some reason, we get it mixed up. We call people Uncle Tom, and when really the Sambo character is the real bad guy in that story. So I appreciate you doing that. As I look at Matron's comment, which Malcolm X quote, makes me realize I should probably kind of do this again, sort of. So Should Be Stop number one says, this Malcolm X quote reminded me of Samuel L. Jackson's character at the 2025 Super Bowl, Uncle Sam or Uncle Tom. So we heard what Black Seal had to say, but this is the quote up on the screen right now. It says, the slave master took Tom and dressed him well and fed him well and even gave him a little education. Gave him a long coat and a top hat and made all the other slaves look up to him. Then he used Tom to control them. The same strategy that was used in those days is used today by the same white man. He takes a Negro, a so-called Negro, and make him prominent, build him up, publicize him, make him a celebrity, and then he becomes a spokesman for Negroes and a Negro leader at that. And then the video that came along with it, I'll play it one time for those who may have missed it. This is the video, and you'll see.
Do you really know how to play the game? Too loud, too reckless, too ghetto. Mr. Lamar, do you really know how to play the game? Then tighten up.
Yeah, do you really know how to play the game? Is a very interesting statement. With that said, let's have from Buana. Buana, what say you to it?
Well, let me just first say that I'm not really familiar with Kendrick Lamar's music. You know, the only thing I know about him is the thing that they play in the Bahamas all over and over. They're not like us. That's really the only thing I know about the brother. And I haven't watched the Super Bowl in years. I mean, literally years. So I miss his performance. I guess Kendrick Lamar is supposed to be the new revolutionary or the new bad boy in the block for everyone to look at and say, well, he must be a revolutionary. You know, listen to the music he writes. So I'm inclined, because of context, to listen to the other brothers on the panel on this issue. But in terms of, I just really want to speak just briefly on what Black Steel said about patriotism. You know, I can't get on a man about feeling camaraderie or feeling a certain way about maybe a country he was born in or grew up in. That's not my place to even say or speak on that. But I do hear the commentary of we built this country. But I never hear the other part of that statement, which Black Steel mentioned. He say, well, you build this country, but at gunpoint. You build this country under threat of death. You never hear that other part of that statement when they're discussing these ideas of patriotism. You know, because your ancestors, if they had the opportunity, the question becomes, would they have went back to where they came from, given the opportunity and chance? With all this love for patriotism, for our bones are buried here. If you was to reanimate those bones and turn them back into people, and ask the people who had to slave on the plantations and get beat at the crack of a whip, whether they would want to go back or return to the country of origin, where their families is from, or whether they wanted to be sons of the soil, or where they was enslaved for hundreds of years, if they was given that choice. To me, that don't really seem like a choice to me. And now that you have the ability to freely be able to go back to the country where ancestors pray and wish and try to escape back to, you are freely able to go these places. You say, I don't want to go there no more because our bones are buried here. I'm saying to myself, man, context is important, and understanding the world around you is important too, including history. Because you have the opportunity your ancestors don't have, and you choose to refuse to take it and just want to align yourself with torture, grief, misery, abuse. It's just a funny thing, but I'll end it there to let the other brothers go, just to be brief, because I'm out of context with this one. I haven't watched the Super Bowl or anything in this regard, so I'll let Jacadero rock out. Go ahead, Jacadero.
All right. You know, if it's okay with Koku, I mean, this is his show.
Yeah. I appreciate you asking the question. I appreciate it. Yeah. Go ahead.
I don't know what Buana's doing, but maybe you two Bahamians can talk about this off camera. So in the beginning, Samuel L. Jackson says, like, are you going to play the game? I think this could be a double entendre because, well, it's at the Super Bowl and he's dressed like the fictional character of Uncle Sam. And so is he asking Kendrick, are you going to play the game? As in, are you going to be that good Negro? Now, why you should pay attention to this at all as Pan-African nationalists is that when Garvey was in the United States, he did his best to quote unquote play the game. Meaning, like, you know, if there was any matters regarding the UNIA, it would never be talked about out loud. And also in his book, The Message to the People, The Course of African Philosophy, you know, he lesson, the diplomacy lesson, you know, he talks about how to be a diplomat, he has to be careful in his expressions before indulging in them. He must seriously and calculately think so that his thoughts and words may have a desired effect without arousing suspicion or inviting hostility. Good. So even Garvey knew back then that, sure, you can have your disagreements with the country that you live in this case, the United States, but also what how do you think you're going to get your goals across by being a quote unquote enemy of the state? So I'm indifferent on this again because of the context. Juana said context is important, but the context here is Samuel L. Jackson's words is, are you going to play the game? And if we want these FBA, you know, to not be proud of the land that they're living, and it was said earlier, like, you know, who's to say that the ancestors of the FBA would have wanted them to be proud of the United States, but they're still living in the United States. So what do you do? And I don't know, because I wasn't around back then when Garvey was around, but I would like to think that because of how, quote unquote, he played the game, that he'd want you to be I never thought I would say this out loud, but would he want you to be as patriotic as like the next person because you could quote unquote blend in? And again, play this game. Samuel L. Jackson says, are you going to play the game? Because if you're not, then it's like, okay, cool. Like, you can just go ahead and just live your life. But if you're gonna play the game, then play the game. Don't be that rambunctious individual.
Yeah, that's an
Jacadero.
interesting take.
Sorry.
No, I was going to say that's an interesting take because if you study Garvey, a lot of times Garvey does tell you to kind of go along to get along, in a sense, to, for example, to follow the laws of the land and to work with the government and things of that nature. So that is true.
It is
In
interesting.
that,
It is interesting.
yeah,
And Goku, like I just want to dialogue with you a little bit about it. I think that, like, Garvey was looking out. I could be wrong, but I think he was looking out because he knew that, you know, just like in every group, there's always extremists. And he was possibly aware that, hey, there's possibly going to be extremists among me that aren't going to be able to get whatever action that needs to be executed done because you're just out in the open. You're just operating at 100 miles an hour. But I need most of you guys to play this game. Like you said, play along to get along. But I don't know. I don't know if that's in fact what he meant. But his writings often come across like, just chill out, relax.
So one thing,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Coco.
I'm sorry. I keep cutting you all off. I'm really here just to moderate the conversation. But so like Jacadero was pointing out, I take a lot of Garvey's statements as do your black work, but at the same time, don't get into confrontations with the powers that be until we have, our own state seizure, etc., until we return back to the continent and to build it up. So that's something I took from Gavi a long, long time ago. I'll be curious to hear what Black Steel has to say and Buana. But first, let me start with Buana and then Black Steel. You guys take it away.
No, I just, in listening to Jacadero speak, I kind of get an understanding of what he means when he says the game. That, and Jacadero could correct me if I'm wrong. He means to be a legitimate citizen, not trying to undermine the laws of America, working, making your money, etc., etc., etc. And it's interesting because Gavi, the only crime that Gavi was in, he wasn't convicted of trying to undermine America or treason. He was guilty of mail fraud. So I mean, no, he was really charged. Yeah, he was charged. So that would be interesting that he, even within him doing his work, the
Yeah.
only crime that they could really charge him of was something as something that he was exonerated of. Let me just put that in there,
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
of mail fraud. So I think that the interesting thing is to actually do your work. I think that in trying to in Gavi trying to build a power base, he was trying. I guess his intention was to use America as a jumping off board to create power and create institutions before he developed other institutions in other places. Now, it's not to say that Gavi was beholden to the United States of America. In fact, Gavi considered himself an African first and foremost.
Yeah.
But he was a global minded kind of person,
Yeah.
and I don't necessarily know if even in Pan Africanism, I kind of have a global perspective, but I don't know if everyone else feels that same kind of way. Yes, you have to live in a particular society, maybe the society of your birth, but your work might extend beyond the borders of the countries that you may have been born into or
Mm.
grew up in. So I'll leave it there to let
That's
Black Steel.
good point. Good
I
point.
was just gonna make a quick point about Samuel L. Jackson himself. So Samuel L. Jackson is a famous actor, but he was also a member of the Black Panther Party. He hung out with H. Rap Brown and Stokely Carmichael, and his mother sent him to L.A. because the FBI warned him he was going to be dead. So Sam Jackson himself, in fact, he took Dr. King's father hostage at Morehouse College as a way to influence the board to change the curriculum and to have more Black Studies program. It's funny they needed to do that at HBCU, but anyways, he was suspended. He was suspended for 2 years. So it's funny when you have someone like Samuel L. Jackson, who has such a revolutionary background, play this character as well. I thought that was very interesting. Oh, by the way, I got to step away for a few minutes. I got to go run and get my son from work, but I'll be back shortly.
All right, Black Steel, do your thing. Be safe out there. Yeah, that's the thing. And what Black Steel just said is absolutely true. I was aware of it. I think I mentioned it recently on Shoot the Breeze, too. The problem I have with Samuel Jackson is I think Samuel Jackson is is a little bit limited in his scope. I think Samuel Jackson is a Black nationalist, but not a Pan-Africanist. And that goes back to the conversation we had. Again, it came up not too long ago, but Sam Jackson was in the forefront of talking about foreign Blacks who come to America and take the acting jobs. And, I never really appreciated that. But then I had to realize he's about, his Black consciousness is American-centered.
Yes, he's a Black American nationalist. It's a difference.
Yeah, it's a difference. It's a difference. Anthony's having trouble again. You know what, man? I think Anthony had trouble last night with Brother Bakari's setup as well. I'm going to try restream by next week and see if that works for everyone better. But I don't know what it is with this platform. I don't know why Buana and Jacadero and Black Steel and them could get on, and we have all this trouble with Anthony getting on every week. So I hope Anthony can hear that out there in the chat. In the meantime, though, while I have you two brothers here and you can hear me, is there any last thoughts you have on this topic?
I think that I think a dangerous thing sometimes, what we do and what we do sometimes is, for instance, the statement that Samuel L. Jackson was once a revolutionary. And I think that we did that to another black person like last week. There was once something during the 60s or 70s. And but see, the only issue I have with that is sometimes political philosophies change and political ideas change about the world. Even Clarence Thomas was mixed in with the Black Panthers at one particular period of time, and look where he is now. Even some of the leaders in the Black Panther party turn out to be staunch conservative, right wing ones, by the way, right wing ones, and Angela Davises of the world, find out who she's attached to and assigned to, and what she is currently doing. So I think that, see, political ideologies and ideas change; they don't stay the same forever. So because a man was one thing one time in his life, it doesn't necessarily mean that he remained that throughout his life. And I just really just want to stick a pin in that to bring to the awareness of the brothers that sometimes these brothers them might have crossed the aisle a long time ago. And if you talk some blackish around them, they start talking sounding like Morgan Freeman. So you got to be careful with these fellas, man. But I'll leave it. Coco.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You're absolutely correct. I just want to point out Afro Native World said almost simultaneously with you, Buana. He said Angela Davis ideology changed too. Um, Earlier, Bakari said peace and Black African power. Cheryl is out there in the chat. She said greetings. Trig Hobby 262 said not just in music. Well, let me go back to the beginning of his statement. He said the pride of building a prison. He said, Trigavi says, black identity in America has been neutered enough to the point of mental integration. Palestinians in Israel would never be proud of the Israeli state. Wow, that's a serious statement right there, but true. He goes on to say there has to be a separation of black civilizational prowess versus black admiration of an empire. There's nothing wrong with making it clear that black people were influential to America, not just in music and cultural exports, but industrial invention. But it becomes a problem when you admire a state that took the things you created. That's a prison. I really appreciate that. Really appreciate those comments. You guys keep the comments flowing. Brother Bakari was here just a second ago. Please come back if you can while we're still on the topic. Can Anthony hear us?
You might have to unmute us, my Coco.
Yeah, can Anthony hear us? No, I think I muted his mic this time. Let me see. Let's try one more time. Can Anthony hear us? Looks like I can't connect with Anthony. I can't hear him. It looks like his mic was doing something, but I can't hear him. In the meantime, let's see if Brother Bakari. I didn't mean to put Brother Bakari up on the screen like that. Let's see if Brother Bakari can hear us. Let me try to unmute your mic and see if that works. Brother Bakari, can you hear us? Man, what a night.
I can't hear anything. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes. He can't hear nothing.
Nah, he can't hear us. All right, man. Apologies. Like I said, I'll try another app next week. Restream. We'll try that, and hopefully that'll work. In the meantime, if there's no last thoughts, on this prompt, let's go to Shoot the Breeze, topic number 2 then. The matron says that they can hear. I'm sorry. Yeah, we could hear Bakari, but he couldn't hear us. Let's try one more again. Let's see if Anthony can hear us. Anthony, can you hear us? Looks like Anthony might not be
I can't
able to
hear
hear.
now.
Can you hear?
I heard y'all the first time. I can't hear you now though.
You can hear now. You can hear me. You can hear me, Anthony. 1 2 1 2.
Nah.
Let me try again.
All right. What a time. What a time. Shout out to Provide Triggers for Evolution out there. Thank you, sis, for coming through. Shoot the Breeze topic number 2 says, what's going on? Shoot the Breeze topic number 2 says, Barbados Prime Minister Mottley gave a powerful speech at the African Union. This came with a link that takes us to Twitter. Make sure you guys can see it. So this is a tweet from Larry Madowo. He says, quote, I prefer to die being a naive and romantic daughter of Africa than one who... Okay, hold on a second. Let's try this again. Bakari, can you hear me? No, but Bakari froze up now.
I can't hear y'all.
Okay. Anthony, can you hear me?
I can't hear y'all.
All right, guys. Let's go on to Shoot the Breeze topic number 3. Like I said, Barbados Prime Minister Mottley gave a powerful speech at the African Union. This is from Larry Madowo. Quote, I prefer to die being a naive and romantic daughter of Africa than one who is cynical. Let's hear the full, we'll try to listen to as much of the speech as we can. Bakari, I need you all to not
full development and power.
cut in.
But I stand here,
we'll discuss it.
Clothed in the spirit of the battles of Adwa, conscious that it was that battle within 24 hours that shook the confidence of the powers of Europe, but inspired the people of Africa and the children of the African diaspora that good would prevail over evil and light over darkness, but only in the context of our unity. I stand here conscious that it was that battle that forged the beginnings of Pan-Africanism that eventually led to the movement for independence and the destruction of the colonial powers to give us not full development and power, but the first steps of political independence. I stand here conscious and buffeted by the dreams and works of the great Pan-African pioneers, and conscious that as a children of the Caribbean, we have long dreamt for the moment of unity with our brothers and sisters of Africa, a division that was secured by those whose success and survival depended on separation of us rather than on the ability for us to act as one common people. Our relationship, you can say, was embryonic. But regrettably, as long as it has been and as related as we have been, it has been sporadic. And it is up to us, as the children of independent states, to determine whether the history of separation shall be our future, or whether the spirit of Adwa can be our inspiration to confront the challenges of a new world. Yes, I stand here as a daughter of Africa. I stand here equally as a proud Prime Minister of Barbados, a country which is the first landmass that you reach after you leave this great continent of Africa. A country which became a hub for the wrong reasons. But today I come to Ethiopia to share with you in the Africa Union that we can be a hub now for the right reasons between our two peoples. I stand here as the proud chairman of CARICOM, the Caribbean community, recognizing that as a member of the 6th region of Africa, we have come to reclaim our Atlantic destiny. We have come to ensure that the very futures of our people are different and will not once again be determined by a middleman who will ensure that the Middle Passage is one that sees our people at the bottom of the ocean's floor of the Atlantic or in the fields of the plantations of the Caribbean, but instead that it will be a future that sees our people, hears our people, feels our people, and that will determine in future that it is we who shall forge the manner in which we cooperate, integrate, and invest, rather than simply being victims of a past history. I stand here equally as the chair of the V20, 70 countries across the world that are climate vulnerable, 40% of whom come from this great continent of Africa, recognizing that it is only through unity that we can confront the existential crisis of our generation, that of the climate crisis. The Secretary General of the United Nations has already laid out, ably so, many of the iniquities that we continue to face in spite of political independence. It was His Majesty Haile Selassie who popularized and told us that there shall be no first-class or second-class citizens, words popularized by Bob Marley, learnt by all of our people without appropriately recognizing the context in which he spoke and the mission which must be ours for generations until it is achieved. He told us that there would be war if there were first-class and second-class citizens. He told us that there would be war if the color of our skin was more significant than the color of our eyes. And we see here in the continent the continued descent into conflicts born out of ethnicity differences, born out of a mad grab for resources, not invariably for our own benefit, but for the benefit of others who seek to use our people as pawns in the determination of their own future. But we stand here as proud people, and we have enough among ourselves to know the difference between right and wrong, and to forge a future that is not for a few, but for the many. Indeed, as the world confronts the climate crisis, it is the poorest of the poor who remain the most vulnerable to floods and droughts and hurricanes. It is the poorest of the poor, and soon to be the middle of the middle, who will no longer be able to access insurance and therefore to be able to forge ahead with development if we do not make changes. We have examples of a partnership that have worked for us, not just from the spirit of Adwa and the conquest and the rise of the Pan-Africanist movement in our history, but within recent times. During the COVID-19 pandemic, it was the Africa Union, under the leadership then of President Ramaphosa, and with the assistance of Dr. Tedros of the WHO, that recognized that the Caribbean, which was being marginalized by denial of access to basic therapeutics, basic medical equipment, to vaccines, that we should not be left as pariahs on the global landscape, but that our brothers and sisters in Africa would bring us through the Africa Medical Supplies platform to be able to ensure that we could secure for our own people It was with the solidarity of many of you in the Africa Union that the Bridgetown Initiative has been able to take root and to make a case for a more modern and a fairer system that allows us to be able to access finance and to be able to put in place measures that allow us to be able to pause our repayment of debt during the period of necessity for rebuilding after horrific climatic events. We have seen how partnership helps us. We do not need any more evidence. What is required of us is to lead the way to peace, to prosperity, and to justice. And the reparations which we call for the international community to be able to recognize, first and foremost, with that which we ask from each of our children. Say sorry. Say sorry. And mean it. And after, recognize that the future of the world is not possible without the stability of Africa and its diaspora. For as long as hypocrisy and double standards remain, it will be impossible to secure stability and peace in any nation across the earth. The reparations that we call for, beyond sorry, must be for fair access and development and compensation, because we each started the journey of independence with a chronic deficit. A deficit of resources, a deficit of fairness, a deficit of opportunity. And it is up to us, many of us in the second and third generation of independence, to be able to frame out fairly, in a mature conversation, what those reparations must look like if we are to attain justice and to inspire the young people of this world that good must always prevail over evil. But it is not only the reparations that we ask from the international community, because we ourselves must repair the damage that was foisted on us. The notion that transit visas, begging for them, must be the lot of our people in order to move across this world cannot be something that gives us satisfaction. To go east and to go west, we are first forced to go north. It is not right. And it is not beyond the heads of government and heads of state, of the region, of the Caribbean community, and of the continent of Africa, to determine that we must stop talking about, but simply do what is necessary to build the air bridges and sea bridges to guarantee that we control our destiny. I ask us to reflect on this because it is this simple act, apart from our music and our culture and our food, that will guarantee that it is not simply heads of government and heads of state that will meet in Accra or Bridgetown, but it is ordinary people who will be able to trade and to move from the closest point of Dakar to the closest point of Bridgetown, to be able to open up the opportunities that technically ought to be available not just simply through the Africa Free Trade Area or the CARICOM single market and economy, but through the combined opportunities provided by both. We need to recognize that in an era where AI is threatening to redefine what humanity can do and even if we can survive, that it is not ours to be the victims once again of technology as we were with gunpowder, but it is for us to help shape the future of the world, because more often than not it is Africa and its people who have brought the humanizing forces to bear on civilization. And if we are to be the cradle of civilization, then we are to be the protectors of people and planet, of humanity as we go forward. And some watching on may say, how? And I say, how not? How not does a continent that has 40% of the world's minerals not be in charge of helping to secure the destiny and stability of the planet? How not does the numbers of our two communities, who constitute a third of the world's states, not act in singular purpose to forge the kind of world that we want, and to be able to ensure that the institutions that deny access to us, to hear our voices as reflective of the continent and of the small island developing states of the world, how do we not secure that admission, which is not only just, but a moral imperative if the world is to have stability in this 21st century? My friends, I ask you, how do we not secure this victory when 1 in every 5 and possibly 1 in every 4 persons on the planet will come from this continent and its diaspora? Those who lead today have a moral imperative, not just to our citizens in our own countries, but above all else, to unity. The spirit of Adwa demands of us that we recognize that even in the face of the greatest technology being foisted upon us, that we can rise and win if we act in unity. This has been a message not given by our generation alone, but by previous generations of African and Caribbean leaders. But we ask ourselves, why does it elude us? And the answer comes not from outside, but only from within. When I speak of the USA with affection, I do not only want to speak of that which is known in the Americas. I want to speak about that which ought to have been possible if the 1884 Berlin talks did not take place. The possibility of the United States of Africa, which is as diverse as India, which is as diverse as China in terms of ethnicity and language and religion, but which is entirely possible if we see not ourselves first, but we see the unity of ourselves together. This may be the cry of a naive and romantic daughter of Africa. But if that is the case, I prefer to die being a naive and romantic daughter of Africa than one who is cynical and one who is daunted by the actions and power of others. We know what it is to stand in unity with you to fight apartheid and to fight for the liberation of the peoples of Africa. For when President Castro stood to send people from his own country to southern Africa to free your people, it was in my own country that the planes refueled, ensuring that that battle was possible. And when 100 years ago, almost, a Barbadian man and woman left our nation and left the United States to come here, Arnold and Mignon Ford, he wrote the anthem and lyrics of the anthem of the United Negro Improvement Association, UNIA, and his wife dared to establish a co-educational school here in Ethiopia, ensuring that boys and girls could receive education in a time and at a time when war was dominating the global landscape. They chose to see light rather than darkness. I ask us today, in tangible terms, that will allow our people to travel, that will allow us to pool our investments to ensure that the people of Africa not be denied the electricity that is so necessary as a platform for participation in the new world. I ask us not only to pool that investment, but to also ensure that we pool our voices. Because there is too much division in this world today. There is too much war and there is too much conflict. And we know what precipitates and causes that. If we leave Addis Ababa with the commitment that the world is not going to be safe without a prosperous and stable Africa, then we understand what is the moral imperatives we must undertake in each of our countries to secure that unity of purpose and to secure ultimately the saving of the people and planet. I ask you today to recognize that, and I thank Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, for agreeing that the first in-face summit of CARICOM and the Africa Union should take place here in Addis Ababa on the 7th of September of this year of our Lord. By that simple act, we build on the inaugural summit which took place virtually in 2021. But more importantly, we seek to regularize and to establish as a permanent point of interaction the unity of which I speak and call for. And I ask you as I leave this podium to recognize that we too in the Caribbean want to see you. Indeed, in my own country in Barbados, we will celebrate the Caribbean Festival of Arts, the 15th CariFesta, from August 22nd to August 31st. And we do so not only asking for those from Cuba and Bahamas in the north, to Venezuela, to Suriname and Guyana in the south, to Belize in the west and the Eastern Caribbean to come together to express our commitment to each other creatively through food and fashion and music and dance and art and sculpture, and talk of philosophy, talk of religion, talk of who we are, talk of the future. I ask us to recognize that we celebrate this year our resilience, and that we do so not only asking the people of the Caribbean to come, but the people from whom we came, here in Africa, in India, in China, and the continent to which we went, in particular, in Central America and Latin America. This is our moment to show the world that we were not simply apostrophes to the history and the modern history of humanity, but that truly we are the ones who can level the playing field and to create the opportunities that will allow the world to see people, hear people, and feel people, and to value the planet and its biodiversity at the very time when it is greatest in crisis. Let us remove the scars of history and be firm craftsmen of our fate, recognizing that the only people who can stop us now are we, but ourselves. We have to emancipate ourselves from mental slavery and to build the future that our people want of us, and to give them that pride that is theirs. And we must do so in the spirit and with the results of ADWA. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. I want to let that full speech play out. Some comments I want to get to before we start the panel discussion. Afro Native World asks the question, someone who's familiar with Bayesian politics can explain why Mia Mottley as the prime minister is more visible than the president, Sandra Mason. I can't say with all sureness, but Sandra Mason is the head of state for Barbados, whereas Prime Minister Mottley is the leader of the government and the laws and the direction, more or less, of that country. So I think that's why she's more visible in that sense. And I think because she's a Pan-African, she's going to be out there to the world more than President Sandra Mason. If anyone else,
Yeah, I could assist with that, Coco. Barbados is what we are right now. Barbados is what you would call, what they used to be, something called a parliamentary constitutional monarchy. In a parliamentary constitutional monarchy, you have different kinds of rules, but ultimately, the person who have the most practical power in that country is the prime minister. And within that context, you have ceremonial rules like the governor general. Now, the governor general is considered to be a representative of the queen, who is really the head of state. So the governor general in a parliamentary monarchy is the head of state, and that person is a representation of the queen. like how we have it in the Bahamas currently, right? But it's solely a ceremonial rule. The person to carry out the daily task and who have the real power in a parliamentary monarchy is the prime minister. This is what Barbados used to be, but what we still currently are. Now they have decided to become a parliamentary republic. In a parliamentary republic, the the prime minister still retains the ultimate power in that country and context, but the ceremonial rule is the president. The president is what the governor general is in a parliamentary monarchy. Okay, so it's solely ceremonial. But whereas in a parliamentary monarchy, the governor general is a representation of the queen. The In a parliamentary republic, the president is the representation of the people. In a ceremonial way. So that's the only difference between the two, and this is the reason why uh, Mia Mottley still has the real. She is the real power in that country. Just to be clear, okay. So I hope that clears up things.
Yes, sir. Thanks for that, Juana. Thanks for that. And by the way, Sandra Mason was the governor general when they switched to being a republic. So just before they switched to being a republic, so she's the president now. To Buana's point, shout out to Sister Raw who's out there as well, greeting everyone. Provide triggers for evolution. For some reason, I cannot see your link in the chat. I think you're on the Discord. If you can, DM me that link, or someone who's in the chat, DM me the link on Discord. And while the panelists are speaking, I'll grab the link and I'll put up that open letter from Mapongo. D Web is out there. Shout out to D Web from the Harsh Reality Podcast. He said, yeah, it's a nice speech, but she's also pushing World Economic Forum propaganda in the quote unquote climate crisis, which in turn funnels money to Europe to fix it. So I'd like the panelists to kind of touch on that just a bit when they have a chance. Cheryl asks, whom are they asking for reparations from? In the Caribbean, the push for reparations is from primarily the British and the French, if I'm not mistaken. There was something else here. Trigabi 262 Plus says he respects that Prime Minister Mottley brings the perspective of the climate crisis. Anthony McPhail in the chat says the sad thing about it is she's speaking to a room full of house Negroes. The majority of African Union leaders are puppets, so keep that in mind as well. Our boy KW Dunn 7 is out there. He said the Prime Minister is the chief executive. So with all of that said, let's touch on the actual speech, shall we? So this is Shoot the Breeze topic number 2, which says that Barbados Prime Minister Mia Mottley gave a powerful speech at the African Union. Let me start with Jacadero. Jacadero, what are your thoughts on what you just heard from the Prime Minister?
It was an awesome speech. First, the fact that she's even there. I don't know if any other heads of state from the Caribbean were there, but anytime that they get somebody from the Caribbean, it's always awesome. I would like to see more African Americans, even FBA. Believe it or not, I would love to see FBA attend some of these conferences and summits at the African Union because, again, the western part of the world is considered the sixth region of the African Union, according to the African Union, because it is the African diaspora, according to the AU. So it's always nice to see Mia Mottley. And then again, if she wasn't the only one, apologies. I only just saw this speech. Thank you, Koku, for having this speech because I knew that she was there. I didn't listen to her speech. The meeting was, if I can remember right, this was about, of course, Congo and Rwanda's situation, and then of course, the Sahel countries. But it was awesome. One of the things that I like that she pointed out was this constant constant talk of visa free among the African continent, because it can happen. I've never traveled around Europe, but I have had flights to connect to Europe, and I always hear that it's fairly easy to go from one European country to the next, even if they don't border to each other, and it's cheap. I think a flight, Ryanair is one of these European airlines, and it was like from one of my friends just told me recently within the past week. So it was this week. He said that when he flew from France to, let's just say, Austria, it was $12. $12 round trip, man. That's insane. And, Larry Maduo is a Kenyan journalist on behalf of CNN, and he constantly, I'm seeing him at least once a year, he talks about how expensive it is not only to get a visa, but for flights, and how if he were to connect with a European country, it's cheaper for him. Just hear me out. He has said that on record, he's went on record and said when he wants to fly from Nairobi to Lagos, it's like, let's say $800. But when he connects that with a European or an Arab country, it's cheaper. But like she said, for us to go from east to west or west to east, we have to go north first. And that's a shame. So big props to her. Yeah, I love the speech.
Appreciate that, Jacadero. Buana, should be sub number 2. Barbados Prime Minister Amor Mottley gave a powerful speech at the African Union. What are your thoughts on the speech and some of the comments from our listeners in the chat?
I think that Prime Minister Mottley is. I think she's more man than a whole lot of men in that room. She have the courage to say, what many of them would never say publicly, ever say. And she is coming from a small Caribbean island, and she has shown herself really with me to have more balls than a whole lot of African leaders and Caribbean leaders. So I say kudos to her. In reference to her speech, I think that sometimes when we watch these things, right, we watching these in real time. As human beings, we watching things in real time, and we only could see things from our immediate perspective. But this clip is a recorded one, and this clip will extend beyond maybe our own personal lifetimes. So when people look into the crates to try to figure out what is what, who is who was what, who was saying what when in 2025, people will take these kinds of speeches in, and they'll ask themselves, especially on the African continent, what is this Caribbean woman from a little small Caribbean island doing in front of a bunch of African leaders? Why is she here? And then they can start asking themselves some fundamental questions. Even the future leaders of African countries who we may not even know about yet because they too young. They just being born. So this clip, long after she is dead, people will still be reviewing the things that she have to say in this room, and it'll affect them in whatever way it's going to affect them. So sometimes we look at sometimes don't just look at the superficial thing and say, okay, she is just here talking about some superficial thing or whatever. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than that. It's bigger than the members of the people in this room. This speech will extend beyond beyond our personal experiences, because people, even the Bajans, she is a leader of a country and she did her thing, but this will inspire other Bajans and people in the Caribbean to make different kinds of connections, because it creates questions in your mind and ask certain questions. Why is this woman from the Caribbean, a little small island, a couple 100,000 people, speaking to a room full of African people, African leaders with millions and millions of people in it, and they paying attention to what she has to say? So they're going to start asking themselves some fundamental questions, going through what she had said in the speech. Not only that, I think it's important. One of the things she said is we have to get beyond talking and start actually doing. So obviously her mindset is implementing this. See, I am one of these days to get an audience with me and Mottley. I can one of these days get an audience with her. But she wants to implement a lot of the ideas she talks about in the microphone. She understands a whole lot of stagnation in Africa and in the Caribbean. MF is just talking. So she said, well, you know what, let me become a republic. Let me do something a little bit different. People gonna be critical of it. At least she doing something a little bit different. Say, I want to relinquish myself from being a part of the queen and all that business. Let me become a republic. This is an unprecedented thing. First, she is a black female leader. Then she is doing things that's out of the boundary. They used to, what they used to call Barbados, Little England. So the fact that they want to declare themselves a republic is something in itself. Then she goes to Africa and tries to form bonds and ties with African leaders. Not only that, try to create transport and travel between the two countries. So someone sitting by and looking at this, either they're gonna be inspired by it, or they can see her as a major threat. So I think that the speech is a good speech, but it goes beyond that. Not only that, she is in a room where she could effectuate some of the things she says. Because, like I say, Barbados is a very small country. She could form relations. She could do a whole lot of networking in that room right now. That'll be very impactful for the small island country of Barbados. Very impactful, because there are more markets to the world than just the northern ones. And this is what she was trying to explain to some of these goofballs in this room. You can't only just continue to go to Europe or the United States when there are other avenues or other relationships that you could develop and foster, that you could create other markets for yourself. And she is just trying to extend the olive branch to these goofballs. This sister has foresight. We had maybe one prime minister like this one time, a long time ago. But I think that going forward, we need to have more leaders like this in the Caribbean. And like I say, one day I'll sit down and get an audience with this woman, because she about the business. But I'll leave it there, Coco.
I appreciate that, Buana. Yeah, I actually was considering trying to interview her, but I figured that my platform was too small to really make that connection, because others have kind of kind of ignored my requests, who are not in the position that she's in as leader of a country.
The fact that you ask, Coco, is a big deal, brother. The fact that you even initiate and ask, it show you have some freaking balls to ask. You know what I mean?
Let's go. Absolutely. And Buana, real quick before Coco, continues. I'm more concerned on why more CARICOM leaders don't come to the African Union. And maybe it's because of invite. Maybe she was invited. I don't know. We don't necessarily know the ins and outs on, how this works. But for instance, last year, Dr. Keith Rowley, Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, had one of the kings, if not the king of the Ashanti Kingdom of Ghana, on an official visit. I think Dickon Mitchell of Grenada, I believe, visited, I don't want to say which African country, but he went to Africa as well and met with one of the heads of state. So I'm just like, hey, I would like to see this. It would be great. And I'm always for free trade agreements. And why not? Why not with the Caribbean and Africa? Because essentially we have, pretty much similar issues, as well as we pretty much live the same lives, tropical climate zones, and yeah, it's beneficial. But yeah, she's a badass. She's awesome. I like Mia Mottley and Coco. Yeah, absolutely. Reach out to her. You'd be surprised. Coco, I don't, usually try to get into personal business, but I may or may not have, somebody in my life that is connected with an East African government. And he said that before he got into that position, he said that he was in a leadership Zoom meeting with Prime Minister Mia Mottley. And so you'd be surprised. You'd be surprised if Wode Maya, and again, I know Wode Maya has 1 million YouTube subscribers, but he got a chance to meet Dr. Irfan Ali of Guyana. So if he can like, just look at it. I mean, yeah, sure, he has 1 million followers, but at the end of the day, most politicians, they want to try to come off, what's the word, personable, because it helps their image. At the end of the day, even the most vile of the politicians that we like to think about, they want to leave a good legacy, So just try it, man. Shoot your shot. Shoot your shot, Coco.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I have a good jump shot too, so I will try. With that said, before I introduce the next panelist, I'd just like to repeat again, if anyone who's on the Discord who's seen Provide Triggers for Evolution's link to the open letter by Joshua Mopongo, let me know. Shoot me a DM on the Discord, and I'll try to put it up before we move on from this prompt. If not, I'll find it myself, and I'll bring it next week for us to discuss. Real quick, Anthony McPhail also said, Wodamaya interviewed her. Trigger Happy 262 Plus said, I respect that she is also knowledgeable. Sometimes the sellouts of our countries make you question if they really know our history. Anthony McPhail said, Portia Simpson, former Prime Minister of Jamaica, also went to Ethiopia and made a similar speech. I appreciate all those comments. The matron says, I like the way she said conscious multiple times to let them know she's woke without saying woke. With that said, let's welcome in our newest panelist. That'll be Cheryl from the chat. Cheryl, how are you this week?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
Good, good. Thank you very much for joining the panel tonight. I saw you had some concerns, I guess, about certain things Prime Minister Mottley had said. So take it away.
Okay, so first and foremost, I just want to say that, just kudos to her for actually speaking up and then trying to make connections with people on the continent. You don't get too many people over here in the West that's doing that. So, I mean, and you can tell just by how she's talking, the tone of her voice, that she truly, like, is genuine about making those connections with people on the continent. So that's a lot more than we can say for a lot of people, over here. So just kudos to her on that. What concerns me is, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm not sure if this is right, but I heard her say something about inviting, or something about extending our, I guess, unity to China and India. And that just concerns me a little. Like, I know her heart is in the right place. Like, she could tell she's like not a person to be messed with. Like, you can just tell by how she talks, and she's confident, and she's in her speaking. But that concerns me because that tends to be our issue as a people, like uniting. I heard when she first started talking, she talked about uniting African people, and I'm like, oh, this is great. Look at the Yorugus in the room. Like, they look so perturbed. Like, I'm like, yes, say that. So, and I'm hearing that, and then she started going off into connecting with Chinese. And I understand, we all have, and even myself, like, we all have our confusions. But I feel like that's really dangerous in a way. But again, I'm not saying that anybody has to be perfect, but that's just something to look out for. That's all.
I appreciate that. Sure. I think I'll just say this real quickly, and then Buano will take it away. I think if I'm not misremembering what she said, even though we just watched it like 10 minutes ago, I think she wanted to connect. I think Buana said it too. I think she wanted to connect with those countries on a, how do you put it, on a business level. I think she was saying that we don't, like Buana said earlier, we don't only have to just deal with America, but we could deal with some of these other groups who have similar who have similar makeup like we have, like like Africans have, etc. But am I misspeaking, or is that the case?
No. Here's the thing. I hear what Shirley is saying, and I understand the scope that Shirley is looking from. But I would only tell Shirley to consider she is talking as a Pan Africanist in a room full of Africans as well. But she is also the president. She is also the prime minister of a country which has a substantial Indian and Chinese population. So, so in speaking in a diplomatic way, you can't see it. She have to go back to the same people who go vote for the next electoral year. So you can't seem too one-sided in conversations you have, because the Chinese population or the Indian population will feel excluded. So like I say, when you're in these kinds of situations, you have to wear more than one hat, because you don't want to seem like the king in America right now who represent white supremacy to the fullest, and he don't business. You want to be diplomatic, because you understand that, hey, yes, this is my intention, but I have to also speak in a way that recognizes the fact that there are Chinese Bayesians, there are Indian Bayesians, and etc. 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 So you don't want to be too exclusionary in the conversations. If you understand that, when you become the president of the United States, then you'll understand it, Charlize.
I'll let Cheryl respond to what Buana had to say. Cheryl looks like her setup froze in the background. Kofi's out there in the chat. Kofi said, as business partners or as partners, yes. As for sharing our nation, F no. And I agree with that. And I agree with what Buana said to a certain extent too. She has to be the diplomat, When we get to a certain point, we could be exclusionary, absolutely. But right now, we're trying to get from her, because she's in a small country in what's called the Americas, what was called the backyard of the U.S. And I think she has to navigate that with some nuance too. Kofi said, if it's not working in Guyana, why would it work on a bigger scale? So I don't think, if I had to guess based on previous things she said, I think she's trying to play the little game, you know what I mean? But we'll see. Anthony asked if I was talking about the open letter from Joshua Mapongo. Yes, I'm talking about that open letter. If someone can send that link to me before we leave this topic, I'll gladly read it on air. Lastly, before I introduce, or I guess he left, but before I introduce the next panelist, let me just read a couple of more comments. Kofi says, then we are fucked. Indians don't do business. Indians, I guess, do business only for India interests. I agree with that too. Trigger Happy, Andy McPhail says, Abraham Traore is playing chess. He's using Russians to his advantage against the West. Trigger says, this is why I don't support the establishment of electoral politics. We need a new system that creates leaders. It's a problem that you have to worry about votes all the time to stay in power. That's a good point. He goes on to say, mostly to Anthony, I'm aware of that, but that's why I brought the point up for Mia Mottley. She may also be playing chess, which is what I think she's doing personally. Lastly, Trigabi says, but then again, if we are being honest, I have not seen a single leader in Africa who has a stance that is exclusionary in the sense of kicking out other races from their country. So I know Kofi was trying to get on, but once again, folks is having some issues getting on the panel. Like I said, I will try another streaming service by next week, and hopefully everyone can get on who decides to come up on the panel. Um, with that said, is there any last thoughts here on this prompt?
Yeah, I don't see how Kofi could be so anti Indian, and his favorite president is Kamala Harris. Needless to say, but but I, I would yeah, I just think that what may work in one place may not necessarily work in others, and we also have to be mindful that many of these countries import many goods and services from places like China and from places, well, because I think that Guyana, especially, I'm sure they import a whole lot of goods from India as well. So when you start saying, well, we are this, we're gonna kick out the Indian, you can't, bro. As a leader of a country, as a Pan African leader, sure, but as a leader of a country that has other peoples in it, I think that you have to be diplomatic in the way that you go about things. That's just what it is. That's just my position. It might not go for everyone, but
Let's see if Kofi can hear us. Kofi, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Great, great. How are you this week? First and foremost.
I am doing good. A little bit jet lagged, but I'm doing good. I enjoyed the conversation last week, but I'm doing good. I'm back.
Great, great, great. Thanks for coming through tonight. Kofi, what are your thoughts on Mia Mottley's powerful speech at the African Union?
I liked it, but like the sister said, when when you start incorporating, I mean, from a business sense, yes, we should be able, all world powers are able to do business with everybody. You know what I'm saying? It's a global economic system that we have. If we have goods and services that someone from the world wants, yes, we should be able to do that. That will put us on top. So again, but when she's talking about unity, and I know you have to be diplomatic about it, and her country is not like Guyana or Trinidad that has a lot of Indians in it, but going into a little bit of Guyanese politics every time. Sometimes I would even look at Guyanese politics because it's extremely infuriating. So every time if you look at Ghana, there's things they need for innovation, or anytime they need contracts, or right now, Ali, he's like, okay, there's a shortage of nurses. We're gonna get some hospitals built. We're gonna get all these things built. We're getting infrastructure built. So of course you're gonna need material. They're gonna need this. They're gonna need that. Oh, but we all want Guyana, and black people fought, here, and save or kick the Dutch out and kicked all these people out. And yes, and he knows all about this black history. Okay. Now, when it comes time for all the goods and services began to come, we're gonna get this Indian shipper company from India to bring this in, and this Indian this and Indian that and Indian this. And I feel like going there and just cough him in the face. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. So you're trying to say you can't get anything from West Africa? You can't get anything from an African nation. You just tell me all this shit about black Amerindian or whatever. We're all Guyanese. But when it comes to business, you're giving it all to the Indians. You know what I'm saying? So you can't understand. You got to play this balancing act politically. But let's cut the shit. This is all about economics. And there's already a little bit more Indians in Guyana right now. There are black people, to the point one time at my job, I worked with this years ago. I was working with this Indian guy from India, accent and everything. He was like, "Hey, I heard you're from Guyana." I was like, "Yeah." And at this time, what was the guy? Was the Indian guy? I forgot who the guy was. This other Indian president. He was like, "Oh, this man doesn't know anything really about India except for, don't you know that the president of Ghana, he's Indian, right?" I'm like, "Yeah, I know." And he's all grinning and boasting and tongue in cheek. He's not Guyanese, but he know he's Indian. And he having pride in my country that someone from his nation is running my country. You got to cut the shit. The whole balancing act. Again, I don't want to derail the conversation going into Guyanese politics, but yes, there are Indian people in Guyana, but at the same time, we have to be real with ourselves. If contracts are to be given out and stuff like that, if we want to do this, we all one Guyana shit, no matter where we come from, give the contracts out to African nations as well. Don't pat me on the head and do this symbolism, we're all Guyanese bullshit, but all the Indians is getting all the contracts making money. I mean, I pretty much land my plane right there because I know I'm ranting and I'm raving. I'm going off topic, but that's pretty much it.
No. That's not. It's a part of the conversation as far as I'm concerned too. I guess I guess Burnham was more for the African folks in Guyana, right?
Yeah, and I mean that's not my time. During my mother's time, she's saying what happened was like Burnham was more concentrated because they had like white people and Jews that this Jewish lady and her husband or whatever they were presidents of Guyana before Burnham. So when Burnham became president, he was the first native Afro-Guyanese person that became president. So he was more fixated on getting black people in a right place and state, and he kind of pushed the Indians to the side. So, and that's what kind of started the whole, political rivalry between Indians and blacks. Not like they mistreated the Indians, but Indians really weren't getting that, getting a real favoritism as far as what it was. So when Indians got their power, when they were elected to high offices, then they were just pretty much looking out for themselves. And that's been the dynamic ever since. So people like Chinese and the Amerindians they're very small in population. So they have representation, but it's very small representation. They don't occupy that many seats. So that's why it's like the South Africans. So you have like the coloreds and the Indians there. They're talking about, oh, let's all be one South Africa. So they don't got the numbers. So the Amerindians and the Chinese be there and be like, oh, let's have all on one Guyana. It doesn't matter because they don't have the numbers. But when it comes to the Indians and indigenous Africans that are there, we pretty much have the numbers, and we're the ones that's fighting for power. So yeah.
Yeah, I want you to stay at Kofi because I get some questions for you. So the population of Guyana, in
I
terms of,
just
I'm sorry, Shirley, if
no,
you
go
want to
ahead.
go, you could go ahead, sister. Go ahead.
No,
I
no, no,
don't
no.
mind.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So
No, no, no. Go ahead.
the population of Black people in Guyana is like around 30 something percent, and the population of Guyana with the Indians, they like 60%, something like that, right? Now,
That's a little high, but go ahead. Go ahead.
okay, so I would say this to your lecture just now. There are many Black Guyanese because you say that they should be getting contracts. And I would answer that like this. There are many Guyanese who have left Guyana and have made substantial fortunes in different parts of the world. The sister from the Black Panther movie, Letitia James, she is a Guyanese, right? She probably is a multi-millionaire now. And
Mm,
many other Guyanese like yourself who live in New York City. Uh, the issue is not for the government or the Indian population. Well, the issue is for the Black people who have enough money to make investment and put investment down in Guyana to create something in Guyana. Just as when Wyclef, who's a multi-millionaire, talks about Haiti, the issue is him going from New York City or New Jersey to go to Haiti to put investment down there. But Rihanna is a billionaire. Is a billionaire.
mm.
So I would ask her, why is it, even if you say the Black people in Barbados are suffering, why don't Rihanna put up a tuck shop, something to represent, to say, hey, yes, the Indians have representation here, but I have representation here as well because I have enough resources to do it now. My strength is up. I was able to garner enough resources where I was to do more than one thing in the country that I exist in. So I'm asking you, why don't the wealthy Black Guyanese start making investments in Guyana to be able not even to compete, but to create something substantial where you don't have to depend so much on the government for contract, because I could go to Kofi's hotel or business place and get jobs and employment and opportunities there. That's the question I have for you.
I'm gonna tell you. I have to reveal an ugly truth. I mean, as far as my family, but it's probably the mentality of the generation of, depends how long you've been in the country. This goes for most of us that are immigrants here, right? So my younger aunt came to the States probably when she was like 15, 16. And she says, versus my mother who came here when she was like in her 30s, right? My mother always, she said, if it was up to me, if it wasn't for her health, 'cause my mother passed a couple of years ago. If it wasn't for my health, she said I would live in Guyana, right? And I told my aunt that. She's like, of course, your mom, my sister, wanted to live there because she grew up most of her life there. So she has more invested there versus me, who came here when I was like 15, 16. I have recollections of Ghana. I remember, growing up in Ghana and things like that, but my life was mostly here. I'm saying that to say is that they seem like that they consider it their home, but they can consider the United States more of their home than where they came from, because they have more time, more memories, more roots here than they would back home. So they wouldn't go back home. They say, why would I go back home? Well, who's at home for me? I don't know anybody there. You know what I'm saying? The people that I do know, or my elders, they're all gone. Versus like if someone like probably like my mother's age or something, my mother's age or something like that, there's still people there that she may know. She has, you know what I'm saying, and says some of the places and the towns and things like that, all the people are gone. So there's no one there. So when I'm going back, the streets are different. A lot of things have changed. Even my cousins that came here in the late 90s, in the late 80s, early 90s. They went back in the early 2000s, like, yo, what's going on? No, everything is like changed. I don't know if that answers your question, but I seem there's a lack of, how should I put it? There's concern of what's going on there, but not enough to move their ass to do something about it. And
Okay,
that's what I'm finding.
so briefly, and I know everyone is waiting. So briefly, when Chinese Americans come to China, Chinese Americans don't lose, first of all, their language. Many of them still able to speak. Second generation is now. I talk about first generation is. They are able to have ties and connections back to China where they could import many goods and services to sell to American consumers. With the Jews, the New York Jews, first and second and third generations came from out of Europe and stuff like that, and then they created a nation called Israel and things like that. Nation, they can still continue to have ties back to their mother country, connections where they could still be able to forward and send and ship back goods and services from their respective countries in Israel. Why is it that the black immigrant, now I ain't saying this is for all, but when the black immigrant decides to migrate, now the ties are cut off. I don't gotta look back at that suffering no more. I have reached the land of milk and honey. Let me forward this. I am an American citizen. Don't tell me nothing but no back from where I come from. Why is it that we do that and everyone else is not doing that? And then we cry about, oh, anyways, it's all good. It's all
No,
good.
no, understand what you're saying. And again, my aunt is my favorite aunt. I love all my aunts, but this is my favorite aunt. She's a doctor. She's one of those did Doctors Without Borders. She was in Africa, worked in Africa for a little while. She kind of went all over the world. She could pretty much go anywhere in the world, start a practice. But she's not. She's in Atlanta doing what she's doing. She doesn't have that calling to come home. Like I said in the beginning, when I was on paying attention to Guyanese politics or whatever, there's shortage of nurses. She's, I'm pretty sure there's obviously doctors. She's a doctor. She can go back home and do that. And the reason why I use the dynamic between my aunt that's probably like 15 years older than me versus my mother. My mother has roots there. That's more longing versus her that doesn't. So if I, I assume if my mother had that skill, she's like, you know what? I'm gonna go back to Guyana. There's a need in Guyana for that. I'm gonna do that, right? Versus my aunt is like, I don't know anybody there. I might as well stay in the states where I know people. I think that's the difference. I don't know if it's one answer for all immigrants or whatever, but I do understand what you're saying, Rana. That other people do that and we don't do that, and that's why we're in the situation that we're in. It's not that we're short of talent; it's that we're just short of investing in us. Is the problem?
Can I jump in there real quickly?
Yeah, first of all, let me introduce you. We got Ditso on the panel. Ditso, how are you this week?
Uh, been busy. Had an interesting debate on Wednesday on another page regarding United States foreign policy and the war on drugs. I'll leave the link on the chat if anybody wants to check it out. But coming back to this conversation, I did hear the Prime Minister Mottley's speech on the African Union. That was about a week ago, if I'm not incorrect. And in line of what Kofi was saying, in my case, I pretty much was born into migration in the sense that because of the work of my father, my first 16 years of life, I had already lived in 6 different countries in the Western Hemisphere. I had lived in Venezuela, Costa Rica, Mexico, Argentina, United States, Ecuador, and Colombia. Well, that's Colombia was the 7th. And in my adult life, then I took the trip from Alaska all the way down to Tierra del Fuego through the Pan American Highway. And then I traveled through all the Caribbean. I started on the lower side of the Caribbean, closer to Venezuela, and I went up north, up to Cuba, pretty much, and then towards the Bahamas. So growing up for me, every 4 years I had to move. I had to move because my father, working as an ambassador for Venezuela, well, his period was over, new assignment, so we had to move. Every 4 5 years, my life and my formative years was that moving, pretty much. So I never. One thing I learned from my father. I don't know if I got stuck. Did I get stuck?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, okay. Um, I'm just gonna turn off the camera. So one of the things my father and my mother taught me early on is always adapt, never assimilate. Assimilation is the killer of ethnicity. And I've seen that in the United States. Assimilation is the killer of ethnicity. Because understandable enough for second generation onward who are born as US citizens, who are born within the territory of the United States, to give an example, the first generations do not give the tools or the necessary elements to avoid complete and utter assimilation. And it's difficult. I'm not judging over that. I'm just exposing that that is a reality and that is a negative byproduct of migration, particularly when you have kids being born in a foreign territory, but they become citizens of that territory. So I understand Kofi. I completely and utterly understand what he's saying. And the reality of this is that because how and I'm going to tie it to the prime minister's words. We have a history that is utterly and completely um, very united, but it has a sequence of things that need to be put always on the clear, on the table. But that also means that we have to respect each other's boundaries. One thing are the Africans in Africa, and another thing are the African descendancy of slavery in the Western Hemisphere. Respecting and understanding that boundary is a better route for that unified actionability in politics. And with this, I land the plane. That is the problem we see with the United States, and particularly with the population of the United States. They are not respecting the boundaries. They are overstepping those boundaries, and we see it with the FBAs, ADOs, etc. And they are now in a active fashion, willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly, erasing the existence of others who share their history. And that is the uber sense of the continuing of colonialism. And that's something we have to fight and say, no, enough is enough.
So
With
this,
that,
so can I ask you a question? You were born in Venezuela?
I was born in Costa Rica. I'm actually an adopted individual. My biological
Okay.
mother had to give me away because uh, before me she had four kids that had already been kind of taken away, and she was in that middle fight because she was poor. She was suffering of tuberculosis, and well, issues happened. So she gave me away, and then a year and a half, 2 years afterwards, she had my sister. That was the sixth kid. I was the fifth, and she also had to give her away to adoption. Uh,
Oh.
who adopted me was my adoptive mother, my mother, and she married the Venezuelan father, who, funnily enough, just to say so you would understand, it's kind of a complicated history. The brother of
No,
my
I was
father.
only I was only asking because
Yeah.
me and you are brothers. We were cool, but I thought you were Venezuelan, and I mean politically we're rivals. That's the only reason why I'm
No,
asking, because historically
I
and politically we're rivals. So
yeah, technically speaking, but I'm Tico by birth on the land, and I'm Venezuelan by my father.
okay, okay, cool. You're one of the first Venezuelans I really get along with.
Look, I know there's a Kiwo. I know what's happening over there, and I do consider it bullshit. There's a
Yeah,
Kiwo, not Venezuelan, and it's always been from Guyana. I always
yeah,
will say that.
yeah. I want our land back though, but I'm playing.
Yeah, yeah.
No, I said I want our land back, and I said I'm playing. I'm playing. Go ahead, land. You playing, land. You playing.
No, so yeah, the funny thing about my mom marrying my Venezuelan father is that years before, her sister had married the brother of who would eventually become my adoptive father.
Appreciate that, dude. So, let's hear from Cheryl quickly, and then let's get Black Steel, who has returned. Let's get his thoughts on this prompt.
Okay, so I do understand the political component, and I understand what people like may think she's trying to do. Like I said when I first talked about the prime minister, I think her heart is in the right place. I think she truly cares about connecting globally with African people, but I also think she's a humanist. And just listening to the things that she was saying, some people might say she was just saying that to be political because this, and that. But correct me if I'm wrong, is Barbados not over 90% black? I mean, if anybody.
Yeah,
Yes,
Barbados is over
Barbados.
90.
So if Barbados is over 90% black, who does she really have to talk to politically in order to what is she trying to secure in her own country? I'm just listening to what she's saying, and she's sounding like a humanist. She sounds like she wants to invite non-black people and like from their own respective countries to Barbados. Maybe I'm wrong, but she also sounds like African people are the glue that's going to keep the whole world together. That's why I got from that speech. Like, we are the saviors type of talk. And I think that is a very common mistake and a common problem that our people tend to fall into. Being the type of people that we are, I think what plays into that a lot is Christianity. This whole why can't we all just get along? Let's all drop the past. Let's all get along and let's all build the future because Africa is the future and we got to lead the way. Get it? I got it. Great. A lot of people say that, but as black people, I like. Okay, she's going in the right direction, but I think that's where it kind of loses me a little bit. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong in my assessment. I don't know.
No, there is a thing in the conscious community, which I would say primarily part of. Someone needs to mute the mic. Uh, I do think there is this sentiment by many Pan Africanists and conscious black folks that Africans are the not the glue, but like the healers of the world type thing. And so there is that aspect of like a humanist aspect, I think, as opposed to being exclusionary, which is my feelings about a lot of it. I don't know if others would agree or disagree, but there is that underlying sentiment about the role that Africans play in the world. So I'll say that, and she might be of that mindset. I'm not certain yet.
If just to entwine this riddle, Barbados is an interesting case because just recently they abandoned the Commonwealth. So we have to part from that understanding of the particular history of Barbados. The demographics of Barbados, about the 230,000 people who live in the island, about 75% of them they consider themselves Christians. Out of a population that is 91% of African descendancy of slavery and mixed with indigenous, which is 91 to a 4% type of thing going on. And there's also an interesting aspect. Even if Barbados was still under the control of the Commonwealth, they had been part of CARICOM and they have been part of CELAC, which is the community of Latin American states. And just to make this very extremely clear, Pan Americanism, as that notion of unity post era of independence, happened to be one of the fuels that eventually transformed or gave that gateway in the modern sense to Pan Africanism. And the idea of Pan Americanism or Pan Africanism emanates from this notion of we want to continue to be free, independent, sovereign nations against all churches, against all kings, against all imperialisms.
Appreciate that. Did so. Let's hear from Black Steel. He was gone when we started this conversation. Let's hear his complete thoughts on the speech given by Prime Minister Mia Mottley.
Well, I'm afraid I wasn't able to hear the speech, so I don't want to hold us up from the topic. So we can go ahead and move on. Yeah, I don't want to hold anybody else. I didn't get a chance to really hear it.
Okay, all right. I was going to ask a follow-up question, considering that we have such a good representation of Pan-Africanism on the panel, but because we spent quite a bit of time on that topic, I want to move on to the next topic. We're going to end at 11, so we have about an hour left of the show. I do want to provide a bit of a palate cleanser, if you will, if you guys will allow. So just sit back for a second here, and let's check this out.
West Indians when they go to court. So what happens, sir? Your Honor, when I get a new fucking liar, because I lie him, I tell me never have to with this 100 or more, I know my weed there. Mr. Ferguson, no profound language, please. So what, I don't know smoke my weed? When Trinis go to court. Mr. Richardson, state your defense, please. Hey, what going on, Your Honor? I was fetting in the street and a little paint get on the man's vehicle. He do have to behave so dread. I tell him I will bleach it out. Judgment for the plaintiff. You and the all of them mother con. Bayesians when they go to court. Yes, sir. I'm ready to hear your case. Your Honor, I just want to say good afternoon. Now, this man here, I had to beat him with fucking licks because he was driving like a cunt hole. That's ridiculous. I got to write you up for anger management. Write the asshole thing and let me get out of here. Africans when they go to court. This is a serious case here. I'm ready to hear your statement. This is not a serious case because I was not selling any DVD. It says here you was. Hey, I don't care what they say because I left the DVD across the street on top of the cloth. Guyanese when they go to court. Mr. Stevens, proceed, please. I got a question for you, big chap. How you could tell me not to take me vehicle and it's me buy me vehicle? The vehicle ain't even dark skin. You have any proof, sir? I am on Pagali. Chandel, go for the receipt in your arrest. When Haitians go to court. Mr. Baptiste, go ahead, please. Okay, listen to me. I don't block for no problem. This guy want to move in my place. He don't want to pay no rent, so he want to live free. So I turn up their water. You can't do that. What? That's the devil. When the rats go to court. Mr. Fletcher, go ahead. What? Go ahead, you do it. Me not do nothing. Says here you beat the cable guy. No, not me that. Come clean, Mr. Fletcher. You know your mama mouth. No man for tell no man for come clean. Fire.
Yo, Major Hype. What is Major Hype in real life, man?
I love
People
him.
trying to figure out where he from for real.
Are you from Jamaica?
Yeah, I think he's Jamaican.
That's hilarious. I love him.
Man, he used to stay right here in Flatbush, but I heard he moved to Georgia. But he used to stay right here on Flatbush.
Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to do that. Let's just cleanse the palate, if you will. But let me move on to. And by the way, in a funny sense, you could say Major Hype. You could call him Pan Caribbean, but I call him Pan African comedy, like Trigger Happy 262 Plus just said. With that said, let's go to Shoot the Breeze topic number 3 tonight. Shoot the Breeze topic number 3 says, question, are we the baddies? This takes us to a post on Twitter by David Hundian. It says, he specifically named Boko Haram. I repeat, he specifically named Boko Haram as a recipient of U.S. intelligence funding. I have nothing further to say. My work is done here. And this is a retweet of an Alex Jones tweet say, breaking, Doge investigation finally forces Congress to admit to the U.S. government's long history of financing Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, and ISIS. So I'm going to play the video. I'm going to play a part of the video, and then we'll discuss.
And if you're wondering who's in charge of Afghanistan getting the money, and that money I just mentioned, the 697 million is on top of, and is addition to the weekly to every 10-day shipments in cash of 40 to 80 million dollars. Afghanistan is ruled by folks named Sarayuddin Haqqani. The Haqqani network mean anything to anybody in the room? How about Abdullah bin Laden, who gets some of that money? Does that name ring a bell to anybody in the room? Because your money, $697 million annually, plus the shipments of cash funds, madrasas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram, ISIS Khorasan, terrorist training camps. That's what it's funding. If you think that the program under Operation Enduring Sentinel, entitled Women's Scholarship Endowment, which receives $60 million annually, or the Young Women Lead, which gets about $5 million annually, is going to women who, by the way, if you read the Inspector General's report, is telling you that the Taliban does not allow women to speak in public. Yet somehow you're believing, and American people are supposed to believe, that this money is going for the betterment of the women in Afghanistan. It is not. You're funding terrorism, and it's coming through USAID. And it's not just Afghanistan.
The 40 million a week that comes on the airplane and comes into Afghanistan. So the plane comes in weekly. The amount of money on the plane weekly is 43 million to 87 million. But one thing I want Americans to understand is in that bucket of the 40 million we send each week, we are paying basically welfare to the Taliban martyrs' families. So every Taliban member who died during the war with us, the U.S. government is paying them a stipend, the family. So our families of Americans who died there aren't getting squat, but we are paying Taliban families for basically dying while attacking us.
Whoa.
Yes, we're funding that.
This is just enraging.
And you know, I asked a couple of people that question straight out, like, do you not think this is not ethically correct? And actually one person gave me an answer of, well, it'll stop them from joining ISIS. I'm like, the Taliban guy's already dead. Like, they give you these bullshit excuses as to why they're funding, like, our enemies.
You don't know. So I'm going to cut that video short. That video is quite long. But this problem came with a second attachment. I'll play that. That's only 3.5 minutes. So let me share that instead. This is from Dr. Kenon. It says, I like the way this guy analyzed this whole thing. Actually, Nigeria was close to being $1 trillion economy, and that's the only crime we committed. Why was Obama this heartless? So this came with a 3.5 minute video. We'll watch it, then we'll discuss. Hold on, let me pause. I just realized no one said anything. I just realized that my screen share stopped. Let me share with you guys so you could actually see the youth speaking. And here we go.
At least a decade now. And from that story alone, we can then deduce that it's very obvious that America orchestrated the collapse of Nigeria. And let me just give you some background to this story, right? So we had, from 2010 to 2014, a Nigerian government that was essentially ensuring Nigeria's economic growth. I'm not going to say that this government was amazing. They were not. They had corruption, there were problems. But at the end of the day, Nigeria's economy was growing massively. I'm saying like 8%, 10% economic growth year on year. Nigeria was actually on track to become $1 trillion economy by this year, by 2025. And beyond that, they were also on track to become a superpower nation. They were actively expanding their influence across the African continent and across the world. Nigeria was in an amazing position. But obviously, this goes against American interests. America cannot have a powerful African nation challenging their interest in the region. So what do? They funded Boko Haram. And from that is where the collapse of Nigeria started. because Boko Haram was a massive problem. They were bombing Abuja. They claimed a territory the size of Belgium in Nigeria. They were destabilizing the country fully. It was a very bad position for the country to be in, and that is where Buhari comes in. Buhari was a former military dictator, and he petitioned to the people as somebody who would be tough on terrorism because, oh, he was part of the military, Abi. So you can really see that America funding Boko Haram made this guy very popular. And then beyond that, America went as far as banning the sale of weapons to the Nigerian government. So the Nigerian government could not even fight against Boko Haram if they wanted to because they were denied access to any weaponry to fight against them. Why exactly would America ban the sale of weapons and fund a terrorist group at the same time if they're not trying to cause this government to collapse? This is very simple. This is very easy to see. Like, the correlation is right there. But I go further. On the eve of the 2015 election, Obama himself, the president of America, made a call to Nigerian people to go for change, to make the right decision. It was very clearly an endorsement, of the opposition candidate Buhari against the incumbent government of Goodluck Jonathan. The American government was actively fighting against the Nigerian state to ensure that the incumbent government lost to Buhari, the opposition candidate. And now we'll see the results of this issue, right? Because America succeeded. They got the incumbent government to lose. Goodluck Jonathan lost the election, and Buhari came to power. And what exactly has been the result of that? The result is America has won. Their interests have been met. Nigeria has collapsed. In the past 10 years since the election, since 2015, Nigeria's economy has gone from roughly $580 billion in 2015 to $200 billion in 2025. In 10 years, our GDP has more than halved. Our GDP per capita right now is less than $1,000. We are at par with nations like Haiti, Somalia, and Congo. Nigeria has fallen off completely. Our military is weakened. Terrorist groups, so many. We have ISWAP, we have Lakurara, we have Boko Haram, several different organizations at work in Nigeria right now, destabilizing the state even more. And now we know that America is one that orchestrated all of these activities. Now we know that America wants to destroy Nigeria.
So I just want to say really quickly that the question for this should be topic number 3. The question is, are we the baddies? First, this is not how we use baddies anymore, folks. And second, when the panelists speak, I'd like you to speak to who you think the we is in this question, are we the baddies? Real quick in the chat, Trigabi262 Plus says America has wanted to destabilize Nigeria for a while. Anthony McPhail says, yeah, these white folks act like they're shocked. They've been funding Islamic fundamentalists since the Russians invaded Afghanistan. Black Steel in the chat said, can someone post the shocked Pikachu face? With that said, let me go to Black Steel first. Black Steel, True Breeze, topic number 3. The question is, are we the baddies? What say you?
First of all, who the fuck is we? You know what I'm saying? Who is we? This is the danger that comes from Black people, Black Americans identify with America, right? Because that makes us complicit in all of America's crimes, right? A lot of these ADOS, FBA want to wave the flag, Yankee Doodle Dandy, Captain America type dudes. They want to be all proud of America, but somehow they want to ignore America's atrocities to the world, all right? So to say we makes us complicit in America's crimes. So no, we are not complicit. I am part of the radical Black tradition that has always opposed U.S. hegemony and American imperialism. So I'm not a part of that, and I don't think most Black people are. Of course, you're going to have those, the Colin Powells and the whatevers that's going to be like, making excuses for it. But under no circumstances is that are African Americans included with that. I think that this might be news to some, and I know some of our listeners who might not be as politically astute as the panels here. But the idea that the United States has often funded insurgent right-wing counter militia groups is pretty much well known. Again, they mentioned the Taliban. The U.S. created Taliban, right? It was the Mujahideen. They United States armed and trained them during the Soviet Afghan war to fight against the Soviet Union. So Osama bin Laden was a CIA asset. Saddam Hussein was a CIA asset. And what happens is when these crackers get through using their tools, they break their tools, right? So the United States funding Boko Haram is not a shock. Them funding Al Shabaab is not a shock. You know, they funded it wasn't the Sandinistas, but the Contras in Nicaragua. These people out here killing and beheading nuns in Latin America. So the problem is that the United States wants global hegemony. They want to be the world's only superpower, right? And that's been the case pretty much since the fall of the Soviet Union back in the 1990s. The United States has been the world's only global superpower. And they want to maintain that condition by any means necessary. So any country that is seen as an emerging that could potentially challenge the United States militarily, economically, is marked for destruction, right? Be it through predatory loans to the IMF, through overthrow of the political leaders. If they can't do that, then they fund your enemies. So this is a long-standing prospect because the United States wants to maintain that superpower status. But what happens is that, as these countries start to rise up across the world, they're playing whack-a-mole, So they focus on the Middle East, then there's an uprising in Latin America. They focus on Latin America, then you got Africans throwing off their chains. So the world is becoming more of a multipolar world. And this is a threat. This is when the beast is most dangerous, right? Because they realize that their time dominating the planet the way they have is very short. It's very short-lived. This is why we're seeing a lot of the reaction from the United States, between Trump and everything else. This is a reaction to them losing their place of power in the world. Most of us, we know there's a Bible verse that talks about in the book of Revelation, that talks about the wrath of Satan and how he's been thrown out of heaven and how he has great wrath because he only has a short time left. And this is what we're seeing. The most dangerous animal is when an animal is wounded and backed into a corner. And that's kind of what we're seeing. So the idea that the United States is funding Boko Haram, funding Al Shabaab, all these other, so-called militant groups, that's not a surprise to me at all. Because they want to be able to destabilize because they take advantage of the chaos. Who's got their mic on?
Oops, sorry, my bad.
So you're good. But they want to be able to take advantage of the chaos. Oh, so you're trying to break away from the U.S. currency? You're trying to create a bank so that way you're trying to nationalize your resources? Boom, they'll hit you with tariffs. Boom, they'll hit you with sanctions. Boom, you a state sponsor of terror. Like, why is Cuba considered a state sponsor of terror? Who's Cuba bombed? Cuba exports doctors. U.S. exports weapons of mass destruction, but Cuba's on the state sponsor terror list. It's all a big joke, but they don't want any threat to their hegemony, no matter how small it is. Why else would they invade Grenada back in the 80s? Grenada was not a threat to the U.S., but it's the idea of a black-led nation, a black, successful, non-capitalist, a socialist revolution. They can't have that. That they cannot have. So they're willing to bomb and destroy whoever they need to. So I think I said my piece. I'll go ahead and pass the mic. Thanks, Coco.
If I may drop in and first tell you, damn it, Black Steel, you took away 75% of what I was going to say.
You missed me,
He
didn't you?
always does that. He always does that.
You always do this. It's like now I have to find. I mean, go into into the train of what you said, and I have to then adjust the whole thing because now yes, and yes, everything you said was correct. My only difference is I will never mix a Bible's thingy in my conversation because I'm an idiot. But anyhow, point is, you took the whole freaking conversation away.
My bad. You go last.
No.
I'll let you build on what I said. Just go last. Great minds think alike, man. What can I say? Great minds think alike.
No, that's why I love you, man. Because in that way, I can make more concise. I'm just gonna put it this way: Oliver North. If nobody knows who Oliver North is, he's going to head the NRA. And this is the man who negotiated with drug traffickers and opened the routes of cocaine towards black North American communities in the 80s. This is a treacherous individual who's now going to head the NRA. Not to mention that Mexico has sued gun manufacturers in regards of how guns are helping the issue of the cartels. But short and concise, United States foreign policy is the baddie, is the terrorism, is the enemy. That's a fact. But they're not alone. European foreign policy, historically and even today, in support of what has the United States done, is also the enemy. And that includes Russia in many ways, because Russia played the game also.
In the chat, Anthony McPhail says, just imagine a strong Pan-Africanist Congo, DRC, or Nigeria with their economic potential. Destabilizing these nations and Africa in general is a war plan by the West. Let's hear from Kofi next. Kofi, do you have anything else to add?
Like I said, Black Steel's always stealing the thunder, man. He always, but that's why we love him, man. That's good. It means I love like minded people, right? Only thing I would have to say is this: my pushback on would be this Alex Jones. Alex Jones is very, very questionable. He's the one. He's very, very, very far left.
Uh,
The frog's gay and all this other stuff, and he's the one
if we
saying,
could take out Alex Jones, that would be great, because he's a charlatan, a liar, a
"Yeah,
scammer, a
yeah."
criminal. He's a murderer. He's
Well,
everything that.
I don't know if he's a murderer. I don't know about all that, but he's the
No,
one that said,
he's accomplice to murder.
okay, that's fair enough because he said the Sandy Hook shooting was a false flag, that they were that Sandy Hook never really happened, and all the parents were actors, crisis actors, and the kids were crisis actors to the point where the families had to move several times because he doxed them, to the point where I can't even imagine this. They go to their children's grave site, and their children's grave site is desecrated because they're saying, "Oh, no one's buried here," and their child's grave site has been vandalized. So for that, Infowars, I don't think Infowars is even around. If so, they have to
No,
pay out hundreds of millions of
Infowars
dollars.
was the Onion, that satire. The Onion bought Infowars.
Ah. Yeah, so they probably saved him because Alex Jones was literally just crying because he was losing his whole network. But besides that, everything that Black Steel is saying is good, and it reminds me of a lot of coups that they've done. And I remember one of the first coups that I saw a documentary about was in Equatorial Guinea, and it was basically they found like all oil off of the shore of Equatorial Guinea, and the United States have no problem with them or anything like that. Equatorial Guinea was selling their oil for a certain price. Exxon and Mobil was like, well, that's too high. Can you do it? Can you sell it for this amount? And they were like, no, this is the price. This is what you're gonna asking for. All of a sudden, oh, President Obiang, oh, he does voodoo and he's a dictator and he does all these other things. And he had like a son that was here. So, and he had like an account in United States. They froze this account, froze his assets, all that. And to what Ditso Point was saying, it was England, France, and United States that had a hand in it, but they had like some fall guy that was gonna do it. So they took a lot of soldiers from South Africa and all these other places, these ex-militia black groups, and it was like an open secret that they were gonna invade on President Obiang, kill him, and put a puppet president, to the point where someone took it seriously and were ready for them. Right. So right now, the end of that story is that when he found out that's what happened, he no longer does business with the United States anymore. He's like, no, I'm not doing any more business with the United States anymore. And I think China is now getting their oil. right? So this is something that is not surprising. That's why that's why when I talk about international politics and I hear Africa or any African nation doing business with China or doing business with Russia, I'm like, okay, as an American, for what it's worth, as a Black American, which really doesn't really not worth spit, especially nowadays. As an Black American, I was like, that's concerning. As an African, I said, oh, I hope they make a good deal because you cannot trust America. You simply cannot trust America. Same thing on Black Sea was used in Cuba. Cuba is not a threat militarily to America, but it's them being more prosperous in doing something that's better than America that would take the light off of America. That's the problem that they have. So the only reason, look how small Cuba is. What's the reason? So the whole Cuban Missile Crisis and everything. The only reason why America wouldn't even touch Cuba because you touch me, you're touching Russia. So what America does, back up. We need allies. We have to look at who our allies is and who our enemy is, and not through the lens of red, white, and blue. And I'm not pretty much regurgitate what Black Steel says because everything he says is on point. And I'll pass it.
Can I add on this real quickly?
You gotta be brief, so be brief.
Yeah, brief. Isn't it funny that MAGA today is destroying that hegemony while under the same breath they're pushing for it?
Yeah, it's okie doke. It's the okie doke. It's a distraction. It's a mass distraction that they're doing. So they have to talk about the gay this, and it's all Biden's fault while robbing your information, getting rid of getting rid of Black history, getting rid of protections for oh my gosh, having a brain fart. Getting rid of 9/11 victims, all this funding for 9/11 victims, for vets, hospitals, kids cancer research, all these things. Groceries still high and everything, but they have to do the whole culture war thing. So, but people are waking up. If everyone look at the news right now, Republicans are pissed. MAGA's pissed.
With that said, let's hear from our sister Cheryl on this topic.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have too much to say. Grass is green, water is wet, and you can always count on the Urugu to create the problem and try to come in and act like they're the solution. It's like classic Hegelian dialectic. So I mean, that's how they operate. That's it's in their nature. So
I appreciate that, Sister Cheryl. Let's hear from Jacadero.
Yeah, not much to add, but it's not too surprising that some of these monies were going to extremist groups. It's interesting because this money that is being uncovered that was mismanaged, I just have so many questions about it myself. Is like pretty because an auditing is happening right now, but what happens in 4 years when this administration's done? Do they just go back to, if we get a candidate that is from the other side that had directly opposing views than the current president, then does America go back to like? So I'm just like what happens like afterwards? So I'm not surprised, but I'm also like, if this is true, where do we go 5 years from now? No.
I can answer you. I can answer that
Well,
question.
who
There is
says the money's
no
being mismanaged?
there's no going back. This is American policy. There's no. It doesn't matter what if it's Democrats, Republican, Independent. The job. This is the job. This is the job. If anyone look at Muhammad Ali when he was doing it was an interview back in the '60s, they asked him, "Hey, would you want to be president?" He said, "Hell no." He said without a second thought. He said, "Hell no, I don't want to be the president," because he knows what the job is.
And Coffee, sorry if I'm gonna be real brief. One, for example, this issue of the USA aid, 697 million. Scott Perry saying, "Well, it inadvertently funded Boko Haram, ISIS, whatever." Don't get misguided. They're bullshitting you in every level way possible. Because the following question would be, how does the United States explain $4.1 trillion in Afghanistan in the 20 years of that war and the failure that it was, and well over almost $3 trillion in the war on drugs, with failures like the Plan Colombia or Plan Merida? Sure, there is the question of how USA aid was utilized as a uh, as a destabilizing force for the benefit of foreign policy of the United States. But the bullshit of Dodge, of a South African born corrupt individual who now is playing God in every sense of the fucking word, is bullshit. Because they're just throwing the little treats out there, and the MAGA monkeys are like, "Oh, look what we're doing," and these assholes are, sorry to say it, bullshitting.
While collecting hundreds of millions of dollars in government subsidies, but he's cutting things for child cancer, taking jobs away from people and things of that nature. It's the okie doke.
Like, bro, how you cutting park service? I can't go to the Grand Canyon now. What? How you cutting park service? You know? but to Jack and Daryl's point, I don't think the money is so much being mismanaged, right? And I say that with air
Are
quotes.
you sure? Wait. What? Are you
It's
sure?
not being,
Are you
because,
sure about
So,
that?
so
and I'm gonna
where's
say
the
why.
Are you
I'm gonna tell you
mismanagement?
why
sure
I say
about
that.
that?
I would tell
So
you
where's
why
the
I say that.
Are
mismanagement?
you sure about
No,
that?
no.
I'm
So
gonna tell
where's
you.
the mismanagement?
I'm gonna
Everything
tell
that
you
he's
why I say that.
cutting, is not even
See,
1% of the budget. Most of the
he
budget
cut.
is the military budget, and he's not touching it.
He
What are you
talked
talking
about
about?
cutting things like Social Security and Medicaid. Like
Medicaid.
Elon Musk got in here calling people parasites. Parasites. It's comedy. You know what? This country is like, I don't know if you ever seen that like, alligator gets an animal and like it twirls around like a death spiral to tear off a limb. That's where America is, right? We just twirling and twirling and twirling and twirling. These oligarchs, these billionaires, right? They want to, what did Steve Bannon say? He called it the destruction of the administrative state. Everything that makes life somewhat bearable in this country, they want
Gone.
to destroy it. They want
Gone.
to take it back to the Gilded Age. For those of you who may not have passed U.S. history, all right, the Gilded Age took place.
Robber barons.
They want to take it back to the robber. They call it techno feudalism. They even got a name for it. All right, this is what they want. So when they say the money's mismanaged, they're talking about it. Oh, look at this, but they're not really gonna change anything. But you're gonna see they're talking about this in Congress now. But the money they're gonna cut, the programs they're gonna cut, is gonna be everything that's going to damage the average working class American.
The
And it
thief
might
is
make
telling you to watch out for the thief. That's what he's not understanding. The thief is telling you to watch out for the thief.
the thief never leave his
And the
door unlocked.
problem is that people keep saying Elon Musk is smart. He's smart. So everyone has this blind eye to he has just the best intentions. What the fuck does the richest man in the world has to care about the average person or know about what the average person wants and needs? That's the thing I don't understand. These are the same people that think that Trump is the best businessman. Anything. And these are people that saying you got to look at the government as a business. That is so fucking stupid. The government is not a
It's
business.
not and you know what's so crazy is that white Americans,
Is
you know, are their biggest. They are the all their wounds are self-inflicted, right? Because while we're worried about deporting, the Mexicans, the immigrants, DEI, while they're railing and ranting about that, Elon Musk is robbing and blind and destroying any type of social safety net, any type of economic mobility, everything that Americans have relied on. But what's going to happen is going to turn around. Oh, it's the Mexicans' fault. It's the niggers' fault. it's their fault, you know.
Black Steel.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Let's put it real simple. Out of the $34 trillion U.S. National debt, in the last 40, 50 years, what has been the major events that have contributed to that internal $34 trillion debt? If not the foreign policy, war on drugs, Afghanistan, Iraq, not to mention Vietnam. After every single war and interventionism that the United States has done, we've seen an increment of the national debt.
But
I'm
they'll
just going to
never
leave it
touch
there.
the military budget. That's the whole thing. They'll
And these,
never touch the military budget. We have the highest military budget in the world.
world, and these companies, these weapons manufacturers, the military industrial complex, these people are making money hand over fist. So it doesn't matter if they lost the war in Afghanistan, if it was a waste of time in Afghanistan and Iraq, because it made Halliburton rich. It made what was it BlackRock or one of
BlackRock,
the BlackRock rich. It's making Palantir,
Pratt and Whitney, Lockheed Martin, all those
it's
weapon
making them
manufacturers.
wealthy. And Palantir is like, I don't know if we ever talk about what's his name. What's that cracker name? I don't know. The one who's Peter Thiel, right? Peter Thiel. I'm first of all, as someone who's a Lord of the Rings fan, I'm upset that he named his surveillance system, which is used to basically this AI system, which is gonna search out
Palantir.
enemies of the state, named after Palantir, which is that bothers me on a nerd level. But overall, yeah, these people they're making money, so they don't care if eventually the
Win or
economy.
lose.
They don't care.
Yeah. So
Well,
yeah.
real quick, I got other people patiently waiting to speak their thoughts on the prompt. I don't mind the dynamic conversation, of course. I do want to get everyone's thoughts, and then we can have the dynamic conversation as well. With that said, let me hear from Buana on this.
Yeah, it was interesting to hear. It was
Now, by the
interesting.
way,
Yes,
want to
sir.
speak to the we in the question. Are we the baddies for me, please?
My brother, I am just a man in the Caribbean. I have nothing to do with Black Steel and Kofi them doing in America. So they are the we. I am innocent man and Cadero and Jackadero. I have nothing to do with what they doing over there. But
I'm innocent too.
That's a
I'm in
low
Costa
blow,
Rica.
Buana. Buana, that's a low blow, bro. I don't accept that. That's uncalled for and unnecessary.
yeah, man, no, I'm kidding, man. I'm kidding. But as far as I'll speak to another clip because I'm seeing hilarious things that I can't believe. A Nigerian man just now was blaming the United States for the condition of Nigeria. Hey, that is so hilarious because Nigeria, from its inception, has had more coups and overthrowing a government that I could count on two hands. Literally. I mean, literally. Yeah. Nigeria is one of the largest oil producers in the world, and you have places in Nigeria that's unfit for human beings to live. And currently, right now, the leader of Nigeria, a man who the Nigerian people elected, used to be in the drug rackets in Chicago. Used to literally be in the drug rackets in Chicago. He was the money man, bagman for drug dealers in Chicago. Now, the CIA or whoever developed him as an asset, and now automatically he's the president of Nigeria. Just as the same thing as the guy from Liberia, the president of Liberia one time. They had to, what's his name? I can't remember his name now. Because he was in a American prison, and then he became the president of Liberia. These people come out of nowhere. The United States could never undermine a place like Nigeria. Nigeria is one of the last few African countries that is whole. Taylor, that's his name, Charles Taylor from Liberia. Uh, Nigeria is one of the few African countries who are still holding on for their life to the Western coattails. Tinubu was seen he was holding the president of France hand, literally holding his hand in the pictures, taking pictures with the president of France. You know, why would America undermine one Nigeria? I mean, they are so in bed with Nigeria that it's not funny. Nigeria cannot blame the outside world for what's going to happen in Nigeria. Nigeria has much responsibility, especially the leaders, for what's happening within Nigeria. They have just dropped the bag. You will see Nigerians who have who are billionaires in Nigeria. Now, not for nothing, that shouldn't exist right now in Nigeria. It's too early for that. The fact that they have so many billionaires in Nigeria, and it's it really is telling a tale where you could have people who have to live in raw sewage next to people who live in billionaire status, US dollars. US dollars. And then you look around and blaming the United States for that, you must be out of your mind. You must be literally out of your mind. So I just think that this brother is misinformed. And I think been living in the UK too long because he has a UK accent. He's been living in the United Kingdom too long and he needs to get a clue on what's actually happening in that country because no one on out the greatest enemy to you sometimes is not from the outside, it's an internal enemy. You can't continue to turn to other people and say, oh, it's your fault. No, brother, it don't work that way. As far as the South African boy, who everybody say is smart, the only reason why people think he is smart is he's just smart for a white South African boy. You know what I mean? Because in the grand scheme of things, this guy he's half retarded. He's half retarded, But have you seen one of his cars, the Cybertruck? That's the ugliest thing on wheels. But I guess because he's wealthy, everybody makes the big excuse for him, But needless to say, I wish the brothers well with that scenario, man. I only could wish them well with that. I don't know how to fix what the king is doing in America right now. He's the American king, so I can let the Americans decide what they gonna do with him.
We need to do what the king like the French did to their king. That's what we need to do.
For real.
Let them eat cake.
Nigeria is still part of the British Commonwealth. So, I mean, it makes sense that there's so much corruption and stuff.
Last but not least, let's welcome in our panelists, Oni from the pro-black perspective. Oni, how are you this week? Good. Good. Oni, you've heard all the conversation. You've seen the chat. What say you to Shooter Breeze topic number 3, the question, are we the baddies? Speak to the we in that as well. Yeah.
Yes, yes.
I can hear you.
Yeah, my bad. My bad. I didn't add you to the scene. My bad. All right, Oni.
Okay.
Again, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, what I was saying when I wasn't in the scene was I didn't know you could talk while you're not in the scene. Was "Are We the Baddies" is probably a reference to that comedy where these Nazi soldiers were asking, "Are we the bad guys?" after not knowing the full breadth of their campaign, but they knew they had like skulls on them and this and so on and so forth. Um, already went through that. But what I would say is that, yeah, Are We the Bad is probably a reference to Americans, being the bad guys on the global scene, on the international scene, and not really knowing it. And I think that not really knowing it is really important when we turn back to, people on the continent of Africa, because a lot of people on the continent of Africa have, don't know that America is the bad guy. Like, for the most part, they don't know that most people are the bad guys, but they especially don't know that America would try to sabotage their country, would try to sabotage their homeland, would want to use them to sabotage their homeland. And I actually knew this very intelligent Nigerian guy who says, look, in the conflict between China and America, I would choose America, right? And again, this is really critical because when you look at what's being published, what's being produced, a lot of times we black people, we say, oh, look what's happening. Look what these Chinese people are doing in Africa. Look at them slapping this guy or slapping that guy. But then you have this where America's like, hey, we were constantly been funding that terrorist organization. You, um, we all were critical of. When we were saying, hey, the Nigerian president can't handle Boko Haram. Why can't they handle Boko Haram? We need to help system with Boko Haram. America's been funding that terrorist organization for the last how many years or since its inception. And that's some critical information because there's a lot of people in Nigeria who are saying, man, I wouldn't mind going to America or appealing to America or asking America for help, so on and so forth. And it just ends up, and Nigeria just ends up in this endless cycle of kind of self-inflicted violence because it's it goes back to what Sun Tzu said, which is if you don't know who your enemy is, right? You will. Well, I don't remember how the quote goes, but I think it's something along the lines of, if you don't remember who your enemy is, you will lose every battle. And this is how it comes for people on the continent, particularly in the sense that they don't recognize who the bad guys are. You know. And so, yeah, as far as like, are we the baddies? It's like, yeah, and that's another thing too that a lot of us don't pick up on when we're critical of what's going on the continent of Africa. Why Nigeria could have all this oil wealth, but very little oil industry. Why Nigeria could have all this oil wealth, but a lot of unemployment. Why this Nigerian, why Nigeria could have all of this, potential, the biggest African population on the planet, right? And yet it just, and like so many intellectuals, so much intelligence, so on and so forth, and yet it just fails on most metrics. It's one of the most failed states on the continent. Why that would be, and then you say, well, who is its closest ally, or who has a tremendous hand in its politics? Who is behind their leadership? Who is sponsoring their leadership? Who is, as the American joke goes, where they show missiles on one side and missiles on another, and they say, my tax dollars fund this side and also this side. Why that's the case? And it's like, yeah, we I think have to be like, even though we don't like crotch grab, this, that confession that they had in regards to, hey, look, we are funding the destruction of Nigeria. That kind of intel, right, should be passed along the Nigerian youth, should be passed along the Nigerian leadership, should be passed along so that the next Nigerian leader isn't in bed with America like every other Nigerian leader was. And um, more importantly, that Nigerian leadership, right, we have to be, yeah, we have to just be critical of of the mindset present in Africa, right? That even here in Tanzania, or is in Rwanda, is in Uganda, wherever, that mindset that, hey, we have to get behind America, right? Because America has made it very clear that it has no qualms about funding terrorists, right? And for those of you who are not familiar with what Boko Haram was doing, what kind of terrorism they were doing, we're talking about, arming people to butcher schools, kidnap children, kill children, that kind of stuff. Take over lands, deprive people of their agriculture, force people to leave, set up religious blah 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 blah. That kind of terrorism that they are sponsoring. That kind of thing should be common knowledge among America. I mean, I'm sorry, among people in Africa. And as much as crash grab is just a piece of a POC, a POS, right? As much as he's a POS, this little snippet, this little blurb, that's the kind of thing that should be spread among our people. So that's all I would say.
Yeah, Trigger Hobby 262 Plus earlier in the chat mentioned that one of the things you're supposed to take from this is how tribalism that people always talk about with Africa, how that's manufactured in Africa, how that's manufactured in Africa by our enemies here. And I like that point that if for nothing else, if you get a revelation like this, and Trigger Happy kind of said this earlier too in the chat, you should be turning that into internal propaganda to make changes now in Nigeria. Like Trigger said earlier, you could start cracking that tough spot of the tribalism going on, the heavy tribalism going on in Nigeria. Like Oni said, you gotta start teaching your children and your people this stuff now, like making them aware of this admission. So I appreciate those comments from Trigger and from Oni. And now I'd like to hear whatever the panelists want to speak to. You guys, it's a free fall now. You guys can just speak to anything you heard Oni say or the chat say.
I want to kick in because I do have to step off in about 10 minutes. So I just want to say the following, and I want to set this whole thing in the following way. One, to those who may think that this type of conversation is only blaming the United States for the problems internally in each country, it goes over their head, because it isn't about blaming United States. It's about the accountability of United States foreign policy and its contribution and the aggravation of internal issues in each of different countries. They have not helped, they have made things worse. Understanding that principle, then we can have the honest conversation of the impact of foreign policy throughout the whole diaspora and throughout the whole world. To be sincere, and with this, and I'm gonna land the plane real quickly on this. We cannot continue having these conversations unless we put the effort of understanding the nuance around those points and making the effort of changing our own language. United States is not America. United States is a country within America. And given that type of example, if we're able to change the way we communicate this historical reality, then we may have a better chance at that we the baddies or them the baddies have a better opportunity of change. It's hell of a work because you have to modify almost everything that and how you address things in and a lot in English, but it happens also in Spanish and in other languages. There's no such thing as the West. There has never been. There's Western Hemisphere and the Western European. just like there's Western Africa. There's no such thing as a unique hegemony of the United States. There has never been in that way. We've enabled that hegemony throughout the superpower or the greatness of the country, etc. And when we say we, it's we. We've enabled that. And it's time to take that back and say, no, 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 no. That's not how the real world works. We're all equals here. And to land, I think that the major responsibility that we have, and I spoke this on another podcast, this conversation is nothing new. This conversation has been ongoing for the past 500 years and more in depth in the last 200 years. We owe to our ancestors, to those who came before us, to continue the things that we're doing right, to criticize the things that we're doing wrong, and to fix the shit they left because of their mistakes. With this, I land.
Okay, I guess no one else wanted to speak.
No, I want to say something real quickly. Because
Guys, don't wait for me, man. When it's free fall, just go at it. Don't wait
all
for me
right,
to.
so Buana said, talked about what was going on in Nigeria and how they can't blame anybody else. Man, we got to understand the enemy that we face, right? And this is not to absolve any type of collusion with the enemy, right? But you mentioned about the parts of Nigeria that are unlivable, basically due to the oil spills that are happening in the Niger Delta, right? The how they basically Shell and BP and all these other multinational corporations come in, they drill the oil and they don't take any type of environmental precautions and whatnot. They pollute the land and the water. Many of the people are against that, right? And when they have a leader, like say for example Nkrumah or any other African leader who is against that, what happens to them? They get cooled. They get removed from office. They get overthrown. They get assassinated. So yeah, we got to start. I think sometimes I know the name of the podcast is Bitter Medicine. You got to take your medicine, even though it don't taste good. It's make you feel better, right? But I don't ever want to lose sight of the fact that the world itself that we live in today is very much a creation of the European and their desire to maintain power at all costs, right? The world is shaped by by imperialism. When direct rule ended, then they switched to neo-colonialism, neo-imperialism. But the whole goal was to extract resources from the global south to enrich the mother country, to enrich Great Britain, to enrich France. And now it's to enrich America. It's to, these things haven't really changed in the last 150 years.
Yeah, but Black Steel, what has changed is when you talk about neo-colonialism is instead of the direct rule where Europeans rule in Nigeria and mistreating the Nigerians, the indirect rule is the Nigerians themselves participating in the abuse and the mistreatment of Nigerians. I can't get past that on Black Steel. I can't get past that because it happens here every day. So yes, what you're saying is true. There is some intentional, unseen hand, playing the puppet master, absolutely. But the puppet master is only as effective as the puppets who decide to play within the puppetry. You know what I mean? You got to participate, and there has been too much participation from people who look just like me and you in the mistreatment of people who look just like me and you. So I don't want to take them off of the table too. Yeah, I don't want to absorb them, bro. I do not want to absorb them in looking at one particular group of people. I don't want to absorb the people who look just like me and you as well. See, Brother Bakario, I saw him a blogger. Blogger has no power. Blogger is just people who critical and taking the sides of people we disagree with. I'm talking about people who think like Blogger and they have the power to enforce the ideas and the mindset of MAGA and the king in America right now.
But still, like, okay, so when you ask your average like Nigerian person from Nigeria, so what are some of the issues that are going on in your country? Why can't you guys, okay, when you come to America, build up, your money or whatever, and then go back and support your country? All of them have the same response, and they all say the government is too corrupt. Well, if the government is too corrupt, okay, as if the US government isn't corrupt or any European power isn't corrupt. But the reason they say that is because, well, first of all, Nigeria was named so by who? A British, so British white woman. It was named by the name Nigeria is not a indigenous. It's not indigenous to the land. First of all, you have a lot of people who are in Nigeria who are proud of their roots, but only to the extent that, okay, I'm proud Igbo, I'm proud Yoruba, I'm proud Hausa, and that's good. But the problem in Nigeria is the same problem everywhere with Black people, and that's ideology. Because you have in the north, you have the Muslims, you have the Hausa Fulani, various other groups. In the south, you have the Igbo and the Yoruba, various other groups. The south is Christian, the north is Muslim. That is that is the bottom line right there. We aren't practicing, we are not proud of our indigenous ideologies, for lack of a better term, our African spiritual systems. We're following someone else's. So you may be black on the outside, but your mind is still white. So when I see people blaming their government, it's really like the white person inside of them.
How do you go about exercising that? That's the devil that you really need.
Okay.
So what do they call it? When they exercise a demon. But
Right.
I think that tell Coco a lot of times going through the process of decolonization. One of the things that Traore is doing in his country right now is I think that he banned the use of wigs or something to that measure. These little small things that could be implemented in your society and culture to get people to appreciate themselves a little bit more. And you have a law that says we're not going to permit you to do certain things in the country until it becomes something that's second nature. I wouldn't want to wear a white woman's wig because it's unnatural to me. After you've done this for maybe 10, 20 years, it's going to become since you have it as a law, people are going to get so used to it, they're going to just not to think to do it after a while. So I think that some of these countries need to go through a process of decolonization and put into laws how to behave as an African person, and maybe in the future you may see some changes. But up to now, I'm telling you, you have these African people who are Anglophiles. They only have love for England, London. The minute they get money, they want to send their kids to London,
Yeah.
or they are American centered. So send my kids to Chicago, send them to New York City. As soon as I get enough money, we're gonna ship them off. And if that ideology stays, then the white man ice will always be cold in Africa as well as it is in the Western world. It is what it is, man. But
One of the effects of colonialism and the lack of decolonization is the instauration of tribalism or the aggravation of tribalism internally in each place. But you're right. You're right in the sense that there needs to be a restoration, a reparation, and an accountability of the internal of the tools utilized internally by colonial mindsets that went against their own people. And histories of that are sufficient enough. Sure, I can talk about many examples. Just to give one in my area, the Tlaxcaltecas were a group of indigenous who associated and worked with the Spaniards to defeat Tenochtitlan, who were the other group of same indigenous but who were different in their organization, etc., because of a beef that had been ongoing for a couple thousand years. This type of example, I think that is important to put on the table. Yes, Boko Haram needs to be put on trial, but it needs to be put on trial by the Nigerian people, not by United States or anybody else. It This type of issues, like what happened after Pinochet in Chile, this type of issues need to the societies need to come together and understand that those who harmed and they're of our own people, we need to put them on trial. But that's the hardest part of all, because it's a you're right. It needs to happen. But in order to happen, people have to face and own up to their own shitty beliefs and realize I believed in the wrong thing. And that is the hardest thing to do for a human being.
Well, I just want to add. I thought I was thinking I was going to save this for the shout out, but essentially I was just minding my business. It was a Friday, and my son's teacher reached out to me and asked me which religion my son, was, because apparently in the schools on Friday they have religious sessions where the Muslim students go to masjid and the Christian students, I guess, go to whatever, and church. I don't know, but so they were asking me what should I do with my son. Which way should he go? And of course, I told him neither. Right? Let the boy stay in a room by himself. Better than praying to some false god. But the whole thing with that is that it reminds me of two things. One, the schools are in concert. The schools are in concert with as I call it in America and as it is in every African country. It's a public school system, right? And then on top of that, we have to ask ourselves, how can these, I mean, sorry, to Cheryl's point, I wouldn't say Nigeria is Christian. I think that the leadership is Muslim. But even so, Nigeria follows a different religion. Not to say that it's a Christian religion like the America, but I don't want to say capitalism is a religion or whatever. I don't want to blame capitalism. But what I want to say is that the Nigerians, generally speaking, believe in the West. Notwithstanding their Islami, they're being Muslims, they believe in the West. And a lot of the leadership kind of believes the American hype, believes the American propaganda. And for those of you, like, I can't even watch Nollywood because every time you turn it on, it's some sort of Christian or Muslim propaganda. I think mostly Christian, but even so, that's what I want to say. But the reality is this, that and I guess I'll just put this into my shout outs too. But I'm gonna shout out my son's teacher, because she reached out and asked me which one should my son go to, and I told her neither, and she's like, yeah, I could do that. So of course, I threw some change to her way, and that's it. My son's not gonna be religiously indoctrinated, but um, a lot of students, a lot of African people around the world are going through religious indoctrination through the public school system. And it's that public school system that's going to select the next upper class, that's going to select the next leadership, that's going to select the next upper echelon of society. And if the upper echelon of society is still believes in the Western dream, still believes in these Western religions, are still believes in these central religions, whatever you want to call it. If they do that, our people are going to continue to fall for these traps, unless we try to clarify who the bad guys are. Because if you ask a Nigerian who's the bad guy, they might look internally. They might say, "Oh, it's the Fulani." They might say, "Oh, it's the Yoruba." Oh, they might say, "Oh, it's the Igbo." It might be the Biafra. No, the bad guy are the people across funding your terrorists. Okay, that's the main person. And as the African adage goes, well, I mean, not to say there's no enemies within, but you do have enemies without. And one of the enemies within are nine times are let's not say 9 times out of 10, but a lot of times the enemies within are the schools, and that's it.
I personally think that Nigeria does have a religion, just like the Bahamas. Their religion is opportunism. They practice opportunism on a daily basis. That's their religion. And the devil in Nigerian religion is being broke. If you they don't treat nobody worse than if you broke in if you broke, they don't have nothing to do with you. You are the devil in Nigeria if you broke and on that broke kind of shit. So I think that that's the religion that they practice is opportunism, and the devil in that religion is being broke. That's what I believe. But
Look,
that's what I saw
But
there.
okay,
look,
so
I'm sorry.
Lagos
Go.
is Christian. Lagos is off. It's completely Christian. Lagos, Nigeria. Just want to put that out there. But they do have a significant Muslim population. But just about every Igbo that you meet, they're Christian. They're extremely Christian. Just want to put
And
that.
and I want to add into this real simple. Religions mixed with politics is a killer of freedom. Abrahamic religions are tyrannical by nature. They have always been so, and they have always proceeded in that way. Religion has to be separated from the confirmation of the state. I I would die for the right of anybody to believe in whatever they want to believe. But I would die and kill them if they want to impose that as the norm for me to live by. So that's one of the errors of our ancestors. At the moment we became independent from colonizers, we should have kicked the ass out of Muslims, Christians, Jews, and any other form of religion. But we didn't. And now we have something that is poisonous to freedom. That's all I'm gonna say.
I think really quick, I would say that Africa needs a cultural revolution the same way China needed a cultural revolution to be able to outgrow some of the negativity that they have. And until we engage in that cultural revolution, we're going to see these things replicated over time. So I'll leave it there.
I
Just
don't
one.
know of a I don't go ahead, Shirley. Go ahead, sister.
Just one more thing. Just I'm not sure about the northern Nigeria because they are predominantly Hausa. They kind of interchange. They're Christian and Muslim. But I know of, like I said, I think I said this in a previous podcast. The one of the main ways we can get at this issue. It's not gonna happen like overnight or anything, but it's socialization. So all of those Christian missionaries that they got up in Africa, not just Nigeria, just all over the place. That the videos I've seen, I'm pretty sure Koku has played a couple videos of the Europeans coming to Africa and showing the videos of Jesus coming down from the heavens, and all the kids look amazed. The little African kids look amazed and everything. That's socialization. So we need to take charge of that at that level. So that's an institutional. So we need to be on an institutional level. We need to get to children at that age. So I mean that's one of the ways. If we control the narrative, we control the the social, what our children watch, that's very influential. So that could be one way.
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
would just, quickly. I'll just add. Yeah, I absolutely agree that Lagos is Christian, and also that the south of Nigeria is Christian. But I think that's one of the issues in Nigeria is that the north rules, and the north is largely, is actually largely more backward. But and that's partly why a lot of Nigerians, particularly in the south, and you had the Igbo, the Biafra, who tried to break away, but a lot of Nigerians want to disassemble and dismantle the nation, um, and partly because the North is ruling, and why the North is ruling is because of American financing, and yet, notwithstanding that, the Southerners agree that, hey, we should get the help of America. And so the help of America is to destabilize Africa. I mean, to destabilize Nigeria and destabilize Africa at large. But and that's why I say it's so important. It's so critical um, for people in Africa to realize, hey, look, the enemy is America. Because if you're thinking, hey, like if you're in the South and you're thinking, hey, America is our Christian ally, America's financing the Muslims, and the Muslims are ruling, and the Muslims are doing what they are doing by keeping their own people behind. There's a lot going on, but at the same time, it's like people in Nigeria, because I've met a handful of Nigerian people who are just like, yo, America's one of the best countries on the planet, right? And these are the Christian Nigerians who are saying this. So it's like, yeah, absolutely. Southern Nigeria is Christian. Lagos is Christian, and all that. But Tinubu and Buhari, they were Muslims. They were Muslims from the north, and they were allegedly fighting Boko Haram. They were elected to allegedly fight Boko Haram, and Boko Haram, it was being financed by the United States. So it's a really sad situation because again, the Christians in Nigeria, the ones that most people would say are the reasonable ones. Most people would say, oh, these are the intellectuals, these are the so on and so forth. These same Christians, just like the blacks in Tanzania, right? These same Christians have this American centered, almost religion, if you will. As Bonner put it, this opportunism belief, as opportunist belief, and it is destabilizing them. And it's the same all over Africa, right? And that's one of the reasons why I think it's really critical for us to say, hey, wait a second, and I think even as quote unquote African Americans, we should say, hey, you know what? As much as you might, like, um, um, America or Black America or whatever you might like about America, just recognize that at the end of the day, the bad guys are the Americans, is the red, white, and blue, and that's it.
Only I think that will be an extremely hard sell, not because of the religious perspective that you were suggesting, but just on immigration itself, bro. There are many Nigerians who live in America right now because of immigration. They make monies and send millions, probably even billions of dollars to remittances back to their families in Nigeria, which has been probably been able to improve the life and lifestyles of many people on the ground in Nigeria. So there's a money aspect to that scenario outside of the religious one, because that is a component. But I think that the money aspect is a heavy one too. You can't, if your uncle or cousin or brother living in the United States and send you hundreds of thousands of dollars back home where you can live well, you wouldn't see America as you call it an enemy. You know what I mean? You see it as a cash cow. Yeah.
Yeah, Boko Haram was like extremely detrimental. Um, but yeah, those Muslims have been there for thousands of years. So I think Boko Haram is like a layer of many layers of issues wrong with Nigeria. Like they've had so many issues up there in the north, because, well, the Muslims have been there longer than the Christians, so that makes sense. So yeah, but anywhere you go, whether America's funding them, it all comes back. It all comes back to the European powers funding them. But Muslims have been there for quite some time, quite some millennia.
Yeah. I would say to Juana's point about the about how the dollar is the that's the thing about humans. Like like I said, I'm an author, right? I think economics is the fundamental motivator for humans, right? And so if you're not challenging the economics, you're probably not going to win, right? All the same, you know, this is why it's really one of the biggest propagandas that America does is it tells you, hey, if you want good economics, you work with us, right? And the reality is that you look at Nigeria and it's 50, 60, 70% youth unemployment, okay, working with America. And it's like they can't connect the dots. You know what I mean? America is sabotaging Nigeria. And sure, like you said, hey, my uncle's making good money in Nigeria, so therefore America can't be that bad. No, America, like one of the things that, I sometimes read fascist literature, right? I don't want to say who the author is, but I read some fascist literature. And the fascists are like, yeah, we should make sure that other countries outside of ours do not industrialize. Because if they industrialize, it harms our markets. Okay? So the fascists, this is, during the height of fascism, are explaining that it is in the best interest of industrialized nations to keep unindustrialized nations not industrial. All right. So Nigeria could have been wealthy and wouldn't come hat in hand to America. Just the same as for those who don't know, as much as I might not, be a fan of Nkrumah, this guy was industrializing Ghana to the point where it would have been, like a South Korea, Singapore, what have you, right? But but America, again, deindustrialized Ghana immediately after dethroning Nkrumah. So again, absolutely, America does what it does to even Black Americans. Where it finances and funds, the gangsters and the gangbangers. It gives you this police state, this perennial police state. And it makes sure that you do not participate in the industrial economy. Okay, Black Americans are one of the Black Americans can get good jobs from this white man, but very rarely do they have good industries in America. Okay, they can get good, high-paying jobs and put some good remittance and get their people out of the hood or get their people into good middle-class neighborhoods, what have you. But they do not control. They do not really take a leadership stance inside of the industrial economy where they are. And some people would say, hey, but they're the richest Black group on the planet. Yeah, and yet they if you look around, if you go to where they are, very they're not really the economic leaders of their communities. And that's the way that and what America's practicing on Black Americans, it's practicing in Africa. And whereas Black Americans have less choice to say, get away from me, right? The Nigerians have a lot of choice, but they are being confused, and a lot of African people are being confused, and because of that, yeah, we as quote unquote, not quote unquote, but we as Pan Africanists have to make it clear that, hey, look, that even the Black American, not necessarily the Black American, but whoever, people from America, let's say, don't necessarily look at that as the model. or the end goal. Because because a lot of times you're going to have agents. You're going to have a lot of people who are you're going to have agents. And because of that, you shouldn't, not that everything that glitters is gold. Nigeria, like if Nkrumah did not believe in the lies of the West, we would have a completely different Africa. But it was that naivete, the naivete that that Bwana was talking about in regards to the Nigerian who looks at America as, hey, look, I'm getting some good money. That naivete of I'm going to be dependent on a Western power, even though we know what the fascist agenda is, even though they wrote it out in books. That naivete is what is killing Black children today in Africa. And more importantly, what's driving that 70% youth unemployment in Nigeria, in South Africa. And that's all I'll say.
All right. If there's no other thoughts there, what we'll do is we'll move into shout outs for this week. I know Oni mentioned his shout out somewhat, but let me go down the line of people who said, and thanks to Ditso who was here, by the way. He had to leave, but thanks to Ditso who was here. The pregnant pauses be killing me, but thanks to Ditso for his insight from where he's coming from within the Black world too. Let me start with Jacadero. Jacadero, what would you like to shout out this week?
As always, big shout out to you, Koku. Thanks for the opportunity here. The Empowerment Network of Omaha, Nebraska. Again, we are getting the Black minds of development, real estate, engineering, the trades of HVAC, electrical. Empowerment Omaha at empoweromaha.com. And once again, every summer, and this upcoming summer especially, is, I believe, the 18th conference of the Rebuilding a Village. I hope to see you guys. Again, it's empoweromaha.com. Again, Rebuilding the Village Conference, where you can meet great Black minds alike, not only from here in Nebraska, but Tulsa, Oklahoma, Memphis, Tennessee, Cincinnati, Ohio, Houston, Texas, everywhere outside and in between.
Jacadera, I'm glad you mentioned that again, because for some years now I've been wanting to visit Omaha because, unbeknownst to me until a few years ago, apparently Omaha, Nebraska has a thriving Black community that sounds like it has some consciousness going on. That I think it's Lansing. Is it Lansing, Omaha, something like that?
That's Michigan.
So what's the Black neighborhoods in Omaha?
The historic Black neighborhood that not only is where the greats of, number one, Malcolm X, but Gabrielle Union. I know that she's controversial, but
crazy as cat shit.
Nonetheless, we're just talking about, African American icons. Former football player Ahmad Green is from Omaha, Nebraska. People don't know this, but James Harden's dad, James Harden Sr., is an Omaha All-State legend. He still holds records from North Omaha. And North Omaha is the historic Black neighborhood. Give me a moment to think here. It's awesome because every Juneteenth, Malcolm X's old house has been renovated. I guess you could say renovated. So Juneteenth is where, or that plot of land where the Shabazz family has held all these years, is where the free and everything, entry free, food, beverages, free concerts, Juneteenth festival is held at the plot of land called the Malcolm X Center here in North Omaha.
Jacadero, what crop is growing in Omaha? Because when I think of Omaha, I keep me like corn or wheat. What do y'all grow in Omaha?
This is awesome. Thank you. And thank you for that question, Buana. I've said this on many other episodes of Shoot the Breeze, but as a proud son of Kenyan immigrant parents, President William Ruto came to the state of Nebraska because of the possibility of a free trade agreement between Kenya and Nebraska. But one of the things uh, that Nebraska is known to grow, of course, corn, wheat.
Corn. Okay.
Yeah,
Wheat. Okay.
corn and wheat. But also there is a honorable and admirable Kenyan immigrant by the name of Jaguna, and he does business directly with the nation of Kenya. And William Ruto came here when he was campaigning back in 2021 to get his candidacy of presidency in 2022, and he came here to Nebraska. The only other place that he came to in the United States was Washington, D.C., but Nebraska was the other one. So back to what Koku, he was questioning on if he could reach out to Prime Minister Mottley of Barbados and if it is even worth a shot. Just think about this. A dignitary like William Ruto came to a flyover state like Nebraska because of one person. So Koku, go ahead and shoot your shot. Like you said, again, you got a good jump shot, right? That's you.
Yes, sir.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute, Jack. So just to be brief, I'll be brief.
Mm-hmm.
Ruto is a farmer, right? By trade, he's a farmer.
They it's funny because we always make fun of him on the internet. We say, oh, you were a chicken farmer, but yet
His net worth is like 400 million. So I mean, that's a lot of chicken. That's a lot of chicken.
we always make fun of it. We're always like, oh yeah, you were a chicken farmer, but yet he got to the levels that he was at, and
Okay.
it doesn't connect. But again, I'm not here to bash my president. So
Okay. That's cool.
Yeah, I think the area I was thinking about, I said Lansing for some reason, but it's Kellam. It's Kellam that I saw had like some black arts and stuff going on in Omaha, Nebraska. Thank you for that, Jacadero.
yes, sir. And again, empoweromaha.com. Sign up for Rebuilding a Village conference, guys.
And Anthony McPhail has a friend from Lakewood Gardens in Omaha, so that's interesting.
That's impressive. Impressive.
Only say I was capping about my jump shot. Now my jump shot is good. My post game is good. With that said, let's hear from Cheryl. Cheryl, what would you like to shout out this week?
Okay, I just want to say shout out to you, Koku, for being a good moderator. As always. Um, I don't know
Appreciate it.
who to shout out. I guess shout out to Umar Johnson when he says no snow bunnies, no rice bunnies, no curry bunnies, no spice bunnies, all of that. Shout out to that.
Shout out to that. Thank you, Cheryl.
He need to shout out his damn school and finish that bitch. What the fuck?
Donations. Donations. Hit the cash app.
Fuck that shit. I'm just messing with you, Cheryl.
Black Seal, what would you like to shout out?
You know what? Jack and Darrell put me in mind. Yesterday, February 21st, would have been the 60th anniversary of the assassination of Malcolm X. So shout out to him, his children, his grandchildren. We lost one of the greats when he passed away. When he was murdered, he didn't pass away; he was murdered. But I believe that the example that he set has been a beacon to so many African people across the world, not just within the borders of the U.S., but across the globe. Like the Black Panther Party comes out of Malcolm X's example. So many. I gotta say that the book that radicalized me was the autobiography of Malcolm X, and my mom gave me that book. It was right around the time the movie came out back in the '90s, and my mom got the book, and she got it for herself, but I've always been a reader, and reading that book opened my mind to so much. So shout out to our revolutionary ancestor Malcolm X.
Appreciate that, Black Steel. Only, what would you like to shout out this week?
Yeah, so like I said, I'll shout out the NBA for having a good jump shot. No, I'm joking. I'll shout out the my teacher, my son's teacher, because she reached out and said, "Hey, which one should we put your son in? Is that Christian? Is it the church or the imam or whatever or the mosque?" And I said, "Can he abstain?" But then of course I asked. Are there any other options? Is there that traditional African spirituality? Because I probably would have put him in that, right? And she's like, no, there's only Christianity and Islam. And so I said, well, then, yeah, he's going to abstain. And she's like, well, he might have to sit by himself. And I'm like, well, that's fine by me, because one, I want my son to be a leader. You know what I mean? And leaders don't always have to follow somebody, per se. I'm not saying you shouldn't, ever follow if you want to be a leader, but I'm just saying that, if you know something's wrong, don't go that way. And the other thing is that maybe this will give other children an opportunity to step back from the propaganda, and if not, it's fine, because again, I look at things from a long-term perspective. On the short term, it's nice if he could hang out with little friends or whatever, but on the long term, he's not going to start, questioning me. Hey, Dad, did this snake really talk, or did this man walk across water? He's not going to bring up those questions because they don't exist for him, And so, but shout out to the teacher because she cooperated too. She didn't say, "Oh no, he has to do one." Pick one or the other. She said, "Yeah," and of course, I said, "Look, here's like $5. Buy yourself a coffee." And she's like, "Hey, yeah, he's pretty cool." You know what I'm saying? So it's like. That kind of like that ability, on the here to be able to abstain from religious indoctrination is something that I could appreciate, and of course for the teacher to work with me, I recognize that too, and that's all.
Appreciate that, Oni. Anthony McPhail in the chat says, "Shout out to the Congolese government connecting with Burkina Faso for military cooperation." Anthony's the only one who gave a shout out in the chat. You guys in the chat, post your shout outs too. Last but not least, from the panel, let's have from Buana. What would you like to shout out this week, Buana?
Yeah, shout out to Oni's teacher, for following his lead. Only the fact that you gave her like $5 American, she probably was willing to teach your son Satanism. Yo, but no. But I think that shout out to all the brothers and sisters on the panel who made wonderful contributions tonight. Shout out to the great sister, Cheryl Lee's, who kind of like take the weight out of the sisters, a lot of the sisters in the room. Shout out to Jack Cadero. I will look up that website, empoweromaha.com. I will look up that because I think you're doing great things. So shout out to the young people. I'm only kidding with your brother. It's good to hear your voice, and I'm hoping you're doing well in Tanzania and doing your thing. But I'm only kidding, bro. Only kidding. But shout out to all the brothers and sisters who made great contributions tonight. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I'll echo those sentiments. Shout out to all of you who joined the panel, and shout out to you guys who tried to join the panel tonight. Like I said, I'll try to use Restream or something else next week and see if we could get this situation solved so that more of you who are willing and interested in sharing your thoughts will come along and share your thoughts with us. Make sure you guys are tuned in to all the other shows on KWAZ Radio. That's Brother Bakari. That's The Forecast, Realm in the Bush, The Matron, Kofi the Black Critic, Oni, of course, and I get the Harsh Rowdy Podcast, and myself, of course. So shout out to all of you guys. We'll be back next week, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I hope to see you guys there. Until next time, you guys be good. Peace.
Thanks for listening to the Bitter Medicine Podcast with your host, Koku. If you like what you just heard, we hope you pass along our web address, bitamedicineblogs.com, to your friends and colleagues, and share our show to all your social media. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a KWAZ radio production. Join us next time for another session of the Bitter Medicine Podcast. Follow us on Facebook at Bitter Medicine Show, Twitter, Bitter Meds, Tumblr, Bitter Meds, Instagram, Bitter Medicine.